Welcome back, guys. I'm excited today because I started this podcast back in June, and there were several different influences. And my guest today is one of the main influences why I started. He had me on his podcast a few times, and it was just this. It was one of these ideas where the world's kind of being taken over by 15-second IG story clips and tweets, 140 characters. And I love the idea of long form content, and this is the reason why. He is the host. He was a former personality on Sports Radio 1310 The Ticket in Dallas, my favorite radio station. He's currently the host of It's Just Banter podcast and the Blowout Podcast Network. Welcome, Mr. TC Fleming. What's going on, TC?
Nothing much, Michael. Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
I'm excited to have you here, man. So IJB, it's you titled it everyone's second favorite podcast. This actually probably is my second favorite podcast. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's just a self-deprecating little, but also, in its own way, egotistical.
Yeah.
Because for many people, we probably aren't even second.
That's awesome, man. So the thing is, you're not a Cowboys fan like the rest. You're a Chicago Bears fan. You were born in Chicago.
Yeah, I was born in Naperville, Illinois. We moved to Dallas when I was 2. But I kind of think that unless your dad is a real failure, most kids probably just grew up cheering for the teams that their dad cheers for, and he's from Chicago, so just more or less followed that.
How'd you end up moving to Texas?
Just for his job. He worked for Volvo Finance of North America.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I don't know if that's interesting information, but they had a big office in Richardson. Nice.
And so you also do a second podcast, and this is really interesting, about XL Academy. So you went to a high school. Could you describe the things that led up to a high school experience? And I've heard several people have a similar experience to what you had.
Yeah, most prominently, we learned last year that Paris Hilton, I guess, had the same kind of thing. That was a shock to me. But yeah, I've done hundreds of hours on the Life Skills podcast so far, trying to explain, like an answer to the question that you just asked. So I don't know how much I can do in a 5-minute answer or whatever.
Basically, it was a scam. This was like get your kids off drugs school. Basically, you're going to drug school, but they're basically what they're doing is not moral. And you've had several podcasts about some of the abuses you felt like that were going on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's all gray areas, and it's great to podcast about because it's a really complex subject. I'm sure that some part of them had a very earnest desire to help kids, and some part of them thought that that's exactly what they were doing. Yeah. But when you looked at other things, they were also very, very clearly trying to run a business. And I can think of few better business pitches than your child will die unless you pay me money.
Yeah.
I think that nearly every parent would pay money if they believe the pitch. And the people were, I mean, you only end up running situations like that usually if you've been through those sort of things yourself, right? Like, you kind of have to have I pulled myself out of drug addiction,
right? And
so I can help your child be pulled out of drug addiction. And healthy people don't engage in drug addiction. I mean, I don't mean to stigmatize. Like, I was there because they labeled me a drug addict at the time. I certainly, I'm not speaking ill of another group.
Yeah.
It's a group that I'm in, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about our people, right?
Yeah.
But you don't end up there without, some bad things happening to you. And I don't think that the people running the school had fully worked through and processed all of those bad things.
Yeah.
And so they were living with their own trauma and taking it out on us pretty regularly.
And when you say drug addict, you're saying you were smoking marijuana as a teenager. That's how you ended up here.
Yeah. No, I don't have like a crazy, I was hooked on heroin at 13 or anything.
Well, no, I mean, I just want to point that out to the audience. What we're basically talking about, not a cult, but later on I'm going to have Lauren Drain on, who's from Westboro Baptist Church.
I can't wait to hear that.
And I also have a young lady who was in a Mormon cult. And it feels very much like what was going on with you. Maybe not to the same level of extreme, but to some extent, the reason why things aren't working for you is because you aren't trying harder, and the reason why your child isn't getting better is because you're not giving us enough money. Type of marketing.
The focus on manipulation and control, I think, is very reminiscent. Like whenever you look at what cults do, whenever you watch like the NXIVM documentary, which I have not seen all of, but people keep on talking to me about it whenever I bring
which
up
documentary?
The HBO documentary on NXIVM.
I don't know what NXIVM is. What is that?
It's a cult.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember the guys. Keith Raniere.
Okay.
The one that the Smallville actress
Okay, got it.
got wrapped up in. Yeah. But yeah, whenever you just the general pop culture discourse about cults, you hear about a certain amount of patterns repeating, and I look at that and it's a lot of the same playbook.
Yeah,
that I experienced,
and the same experience that you've had with the other people that went to Excel.
Yeah, just trying to undermine your ability to think for yourself,
Right,
and trying to reach into someone else is trying to reach into every aspect of your life. One of my friends stayed on there after, in just the fact that this happened, I guess, is some evidence of cult-like behavior.
Yeah.
But he graduated high school. It was a school program, so he's done with the high school. But his parents and he had an educational consultant, which is an entire other industry of questionable.
Yeah.
Again, they're trying to do good things of help kids, hypothetically. I don't know that in the real world the results end up like that a lot of the time. Whatever, it's up to them. But so his educational consultant, was sold his parents on the idea of it would be bad if he went home now. How about he just stays on at the school in kind of a hybrid role of he's still learning and developing, but he's also helping out his staff and kind of helping to do the day-to-day management of the place, sort of thing. And there was several kids like that, and he started kind of having an interest in one of the girls there, and the degree of focus that they showed on that, in just where they're willing to insert themselves into that equation of, whether or not this is good for you, and talking through, so what are your feelings about this girl? And just that kind of stuff. It's most workplaces don't try to dictate who you're going to date and not date. I assume that Sticky Paws doesn't have that kind
hold
of...
on. Do we have that thing here? If we started dating somebody that works here?
No.
I think John has a relationship with somebody who works here, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he does.
yeah.
So that we have to announce that to
We
HR.
do HR. I am HR though.
HR needs to know about
I'm also the complaints department.
Vanessa. Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. All right. So that situation, we're talking about him not dating a student, but him dating another faculty member.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because that would have been a big difference as well.
I mean, she was in the same boat of student turned faculty
Got
member.
it. Okay.
But she was his grade in school. They went through school together. It's like dating someone that you went to high school with. That's all.
Yeah.
But yeah, they wanted to kind of insert themselves in the middle of that, and I think that's just in general a warning sign behavior, right?
So I've always had this question. So obviously, my brother went through something similar where my parents consistently tried to get him to stop smoking marijuana. I've never smoked marijuana.
I don't think they did that good a job.
Yeah, that's the thing. They did not do that good of a job. So my brother went on to sell marijuana.
Shout out to him.
Yeah, shout out to Patrick Sartain. And so the thing that's interesting to me is it didn't work. And I'm curious what your parents think now, knowing that they put in all this effort, knowing what your feeling is about it, and knowing the fact that it didn't really have any sort of effect. It may have had, I don't know if you thought it had a good effect or helped you with discipline or whatever, but I've never asked you, what do your parents think now about this situation?
Yeah, so I think that they're pretty happy.
Yeah.
About everything.
Yeah.
I do use drugs now, but I didn't for several years after that. And whenever I did, we had a mature adult conversation about it, where I was like, this is something that I would like to do, and I feel like I've weighed the considerations, and I don't think it's going to wreck my life. In retrospect, I was correct.
Yeah.
They were basically like, we think you're in a position to do, make those decisions. And even if they hadn't, I was 27, 28.
Yeah, for sure.
So if they'd been absolutely not, I'd be like,
I'm 27.
Let's see how that works for you. But they didn't have that reaction. And at the school, one of the other big cult aspects is the communication was tightly controlled.
Right.
I could never, under any circumstance, go to them and be like, yeah, they're really being pretty mean to us in here.
Yeah.
And I would love it if you would take me home. That never could happen. Anytime you could write letters to them, the letters would be read by some of the staff. Any letter coming into you was going to be read. You had a 10-minute phone call with them once a week where a staff member was sitting next to the phone, staring at you as you were having the conversation.
Yeah.
And they would hang it up if anything that they didn't like came in. outside of that phone call, they're calling your parents once a week to give them their side of the story.
Yeah.
So they're controlling the narrative that way, and developing a relationship of trust with the parent where the person, and your relationship of trust with your parent is destroyed by the time you're at that school. I mean, there's so many times that whatever. Like
before you got to the school, which would lead to your parents sending you to drug camp.
Yeah, if they believed the things that you were saying in the first place, then you probably wouldn't be there. You know what I mean? But like, there's been millions of times, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go out, get some Gatorade from the store, and you're smoking pot with the boys.
Yeah,
you do that enough times, they don't believe the story anymore. But so trust with you is low, and the staff is attempting pretty directly to build trust so that the staff's word is going to be believed over yours. And then they could come and visit you once a month, but the first 6 months of those visits, another student would be there, and it would be the kind of student, and this was one of the geniuses of the place as far as how to make money, is that a lot of the enforcement, most of it, was students knowing that I need to set that I will receive punishment if someone under my charge breaks a rule.
Reprisal, yes.
Yeah, so I need to make sure that they don't.
So this high school you were sent to was using enforcement tactics that were actually illegal under the Geneva Convention.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Reprisal is against the law in the Geneva Convention. So they're basically, I'm going to punish someone else for something that happens. That's crazy, man. So this is, very cult-like thing. And I've listened to some of the podcasts. It's always very interesting to me because I do know, I go to LA a lot, and I meet some Scientologists every once in a while, and I meet some people that are brainwashed. Obviously the people in the flat earth community, a lot of them, I see very similar type of motivation where it's like anything that comes out. Now, it's not quite the same level of control. They don't have like a centralized institution, but it's sort of the same type of thinking where anything any kind of narrative that comes in that doesn't agree with our narrative has to be shut down. I'm curious, did anybody ever get the phone hung up on them, get the letter censored? Were things like that, did they happen pretty frequently?
Not pretty frequently, because the threat is there. It's obviously just so futile.
Yeah.
But 100% people would get yelled at for letters they wrote. Or the reason why we call our podcast Life Skills, it works on a couple levels, but the probably 3 or 4 times a week when school wrapped up, the person who ran the place, there was kind of two. There was a founder who did discipline stuff at times, but there was mainly, the founder mainly worked on like securing outside investments and seeing like the financial day-to-day, that sort of stuff. And the nitty-gritty discipline work and running the school and being the figurehead of the cult, was another woman. And we had a class that was called Life Skills, where you get done with the school for the day, walk down to like the central building, and everyone's sitting there, all the students and some of the staff. And she might have kind of a topic, so she might come in, talk for an hour about something she's been burning on, about like whatever fucked up thing that we're doing, like you guys are fucking up in this way. I've been seeing it, like how could you see the behavior of 200 people and drawing whatever. But sometimes it would just cut straight to, all right, start telling on each other.
Yeah.
And just
start snitching.
There was a kid that throughout the day would be like, other people would come up to him whenever they saw bad behavior, and he would write it down. Yeah. And then you just kind of pull up the list. Yeah. You also could just say, hey, I just saw something. Yeah. I didn't have a chance to tell it to the kid, but I'm just going to stand up and make the accusation here. And if you weren't a person who made accusations, you were going to get in trouble for that.
That's incredible, because they're basically, because when I think about what that does to you later on in life, to become a passive aggressive individual who snitch, basically this is just a technique drug dealers telling on each other, right? Oh, this guy down the street is selling dope while you're selling dope. It was that kind of situation. And then it just sets you up for the rest of your life to just be a snitch whenever it's convenient for you. And
yeah, you do have, I want to be clear, I'm not a snitch under any circumstance. Right. I certainly, to get by, to survive, I told on kids there. Yeah. But with everything, you have control over your own life. You're making your life every day by the decisions that you make, and you don't have to have anyone. You don't have to well, someone instilled this behavior in me, so there's just no way I can snap out of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you're also right that it's like I forget where I've even heard this first analogy, but I think about it constantly of like the tilted floor, like you can stand at the top.
Yeah.
But most people aren't going to.
Right.
So if you tilt the floor, it does have an effect. You're not controlling people like you're making the decision for them, but you're obviously, making a change in the environment.
Have you confronted any of the people that were instructors there?
No, certainly not.
No? You looked them up? Do you know, do they exist? Are they doing what are they doing? They selling cryptocurrency now? What are they doing? They're Forex traders? What is their new house, their new grift?
I think they made enough cash to bro out.
Really?
Or get out, bro down.
Is that what
I'm trying
happened?
to remember the South Park saying. I don't know. Yeah, because in 2008 there was a number of things came together and the school closed. Like money dried up. A lot of people would send their kids there on loan because it was very expensive.
Yeah.
The amount that you're asking for whenever you say, I can save your child's life. It's not a little bit, it's a lot. And so a lot of people would take out loans to pay for it. And in 2008, it became more difficult to get loans.
Take loans, yeah.
There was also a sheriff's election at the time, and I do not know firsthand whether or not these stories are true, but I've certainly had it told to me that the sheriff who came in took a more intense interpretation of the relevant Texas laws about what they could do and couldn't do.
Yeah.
And then there was you can look this up. The news stories are still out there. There's a guy named Monty Morast who was a sheriff, and they had as a regular form of punishment. I don't want to overstate this. Kids went on jail tours during my time. It was not every day. I think there were times when jail tours were.
You guys are in South Texas, right? You're by Sam Houston State University. Right?
Yeah.
So you're not that far from Huntsville. Is that where they took him?
No, it was Montgomery County Jail.
Okay.
But yeah, it was about 30, 45 minutes from Huntsville.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he took a student on a jail tour and did not sufficiently supervise, and the inmates fucking spread Vaseline on that kid's ass. And I think it stopped there, but I don't know.
Dear God. Man.
But certainly someone was fucking
intending something, yeah.
Trying to intimidate this kid in the most extreme way you could possibly imagine.
Do you think the people at Excel told him to do that? Or do you think this is just an accident that happened?
I think, it's one of those things where as it goes along the chain, it's my understanding this kid was causing a lot of problems and was like, obviously I don't condone what they did.
Right.
But they weren't responding to nothing. They responded terribly and improperly, but they weren't responding to nothing. So I'm sure it was like hey, give them the 2-piece spicy.
Yeah.
But like kind of vague. And then that probably goes, they tell that to Monty. Then Monty probably tells the same things to the inmates. And at every link of the chain, people have different ideas of what that means.
Yeah.
And by the time it gets to the inmates,
then it's the code red.
Put fucking Vaseline on them.
Yeah.
And so Monty went to jail off of that.
Yeah.
There were charges brought. And I have to assume it was in the same general time period when the school shut down. So I don't think it helped them that that occurred.
I had no complaints about my parents. My parents were incredible. However, there were certain times during my upbringing where I would tell them things and they just wouldn't listen. They just thought that I wasn't telling the truth. Like, I went to a fucking terrible high school. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, like, even to this day, don't believe some of the stories that I tell. I mean, we had something like a 15% graduation rate. We were the first school with metal detectors. There were shootings every year at my high school. And I would go home and tell my parents, and they would thought that I was exaggerating, because things were getting out of control. Because I'm older than you. Back in
it is crazy to hear those stories. Just because I live in the feeder pattern of your high school.
Yeah. So the gentrification has now made
people like me have really changed.
Yeah, for sure. Like, the M streets are nice now, but you have to understand what was going on in the early 90s in Dallas was the crack epidemic, and so we just had like horrible murder rates. They actually put a clinic. There was such a massively high pregnancy rate, Woodrow Wilson and at Adamson High School and a few other high schools in East Dallas and South Dallas that they actually were putting clinics on there because there were so many women getting pregnant before the age of 18. It was just DISD. I cannot express to you, I wish someone would write a book on this, how bad DISD was throughout the 1990s, like the corruption and all these other things. And I would go tell my parents, I was like, hey, can I go to Lake Highlands? Can we move? Can I go to Highland Park? Can I go anywhere else but Woodrow Wilson?
Yeah.
And they just thought, no, everything is fine. You're just exaggerating. None of this is really that bad because what's right next to Woodrow Wilson? Lakewood. And so everybody's, oh, well, everything's nice. Lakewood Elementary is nice. All this stuff is nice. And then I go to this high school south of Swiss Avenue, and it's just like gangbangers every night. I would go play Madden tournaments in trap houses with crack dealers all the time. I didn't know what crack dealers were. I didn't know what was going on. And I just remember the same kind of situation. It's not quite the same, but it was one of these situations where my parents didn't know how to deal with the fact that my brother kept smoking marijuana no matter what they did. So they sent him to the Arts Magnet, which, Booker T. Washington, which is where they teach you how to roll blunts. That's about the only thing they teach you there. And I'm sorry. Shout out to Booker T. Washington.
I think all this is
they are a Blue Ribbon Academy.
Changed a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'd be happy to send. I mean, I intend to send my kid to Woodrow, and I think it's fine. Like,
no, Woodrow is incredible. When they started, when that area of town got a bunch of economic development, and then the football team starts, going into the state playoffs. We were terrible. We had a horrible graduation rate. Now the whole you can't even recognize it. Worst part of town was Oak Cliff back in the 1990s. Now Oak Cliff is where all the hips. Oak Cliff is like the new Brooklyn, right? The Brooklyn used to be a dangerous place, and now Brooklyn's where the hipsters hang out.
I doubt that Brooklyn notices Oak Cliff, but to the extent that Dallas has something with that dynamic, it's certainly Oak Cliff.
Yeah, Oak Cliff is the new. It's like where all the hipsters and the cool kids hang out in Oak Cliff now. In 1992. These people wouldn't be caught dead in Oak Cliff, or they would be caught dead specifically in Oak Cliff. Oak Cliff was a dangerous place. So it's just interesting, like that whole dynamic. And when I look back and I'm like, I don't know, was it a good thing or a bad thing? Like, I'm sure there are certain things you take away from the struggles in high school. I certainly took away a lot of struggles from my high school, coming to the realization that nobody was going to come save me. That was one thing that that helped me, probably caused me to join the military. I don't know. Do you take anything good from your experience at Excel?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of complicated feelings around that, right? Because you certainly I have a lot of fear that if I ever acknowledge that people will come in and say, well, then it was worth it.
Right.
And that's, to me, one of the most heartbreaking things someone could say to me. Like, I don't think me being abused was worth it. I would prefer if everyone just agreed I shouldn't be abused.
Yeah.
But, of course, those experiences mold you. And if you're any sort of person who wants to make good of your life, then you're always trying to find, what can I learn from this situation? And, how can this mold me? I keep in contact with a lot of the kids from that school, and some of them have gone on to do really big things.
Right.
And pretty much all of them would say that having to have that level of staying on your feet around, and just being like nimble about, and I'm, speaking metaphorically, about like aware of other people's emotions.
Yeah.
And aware of where the fault lines are, because the stakes for us were so much higher. They had just such total control over your life. They could really make it so that you were fucking miserable for a month if you pissed them off.
Yeah.
And so you developed a keen sense of what's going to piss someone else off. And other people who aren't around, where everyone just kind of treats them nice.
Yeah.
Like, there's no stakes for learning what the emotions of others are going to do. And so you just never really develop that sense. And, in this world, you can really benefit from, and I would say in some cases exploit, others if you have that sort of, whatever. I don't think that's good. I try not to exploit others.
Growing up in a prison camp helps you focus, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's true enough, right?
Totally, I get that. All right,
because a lot of those kids that have gone on to do great things, it's, I found the decision maker at my company, and I knew how to give him exactly everything of what he wanted, or in some cases,
because you've had to deal with this before.
Yeah,
got it. That makes sense.
So in a corporate structure, knowing how to handle the big boss, and make it so that the big boss thinks that you're the specialist boy of the group, that's a very valuable skill.
Right, got it. So in 1995. I'm 16, 17, almost 17 years old, and I am listening. This is the week before the Cowboys go to the Super Bowl. Oh, wait, hold on. This would have been 94.
94.
94. It's a week before the Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl, and I, in my driver's ed instructor says, hey, there's a new all sports radio station. So I listened to Sports Radio 1310 The Ticket. I remember Kurt McAfee being on. I remember Skip Bayless being on. And I remember just being like, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. 24-hour sports station, right? So 94. So yeah, I would have been 17 years old. No, it's been January 94. So I would have been 16. So I'm getting, I'm trying to get my driver's license, whatever. My senior year, I get the option for the second half of the day to go do an internship. The first semester, I go to the county courthouse and I watch capital murder trials. It was awesome. It was an entire semester of watching capital murder trials. At the time, OJ is also on trial during the same period. It's a very interesting time in my life. I do not regret any of it. Shout out to Judge Dean and Judge Baraka, who let me just sit in on their cases. It was one of these crazy things where I'm having a conversation with the judge and I would turn around and I would talk to the defendant who was going to get the chair. And he was just having a normal conversation with the dude. It was, and it was interesting listening to there is a good old boys network. The DA and the judge are just laughing about shit, and they and the bailiff this guy's gonna fry. It was really interesting watching. The presumption of innocence really wasn't there. Now, in this case, this guy was exceptionally guilty. I don't know if you remember the Mexican gang member who ran over several people and had scars all over his. I could go back and tell you about it, whatever. But the thing is, the second semester, I went to Sports Radio 1310 The Ticket. I worked for Mark Falwell. I worked for Pepe, who he was dating at the time. I worked in marketing. I would pass out swag at the marketing things. I became friends with Chris Arnold. Mm-hmm. Vaguely saw some of the other guys there. This is probably a decade before you end up going to work there. When do you end up going to work at the Ticket?
2008.
2008. Okay, so yes, this is a long time before. It's hard to explain for people who aren't from Dallas or haven't heard it. It's not like I know there's an all sports radio station in New York. This is not like that. This is like your friends that you've had for 20 years just having a fucking conversation about whatever for 16 hours a day. They make fun of each other for actually talking about sports. It's about 85% comedy, 15% sports. And among the market share, I believe they have the highest market share of any radio station in any metroplex, especially for sports radio. They won, I think, the third Marconi that they've run, which is the best station in the country. So this is they are far and away dominating Dallas. And so there's a lot of people who don't live in Dallas who listen to Sports Radio 1310 The Ticket. It's just it's almost got a cult-like following, and they've had the same guys there for forever, right? You worked there for a while. If I had still lived in Dallas, I probably would have gone back to work there because I really enjoyed my time. What was it like for you there? What caused you to go work at the Ticket, and then what was your experience like?
What caused me to go there was just I loved the station.
Yeah.
Whenever I didn't listen to it as a kid. Just most of the time parents are picking what's on the car stereo, and none of them were that big of fans. My dad liked it all right, but it wasn't like an everyday sort of thing. But yeah, I whenever I got out of the high school I was at, I kind of started developing an interest in, as a kid, I didn't like sports at all, but I don't know. There was just something about, I met a lot of cool people at the high school I was talking about that were into it. And
was there a tipping, for me, it was Bo Jackson. Was there a tipping point for you? Seeing Bo Jackson for the first time, I was like, football is awesome.
Man, it's kind of crazy because I haven't played fantasy football in 10 years, more than that. Yeah. But my senior year of high school, one of the staff members at the rehab thought it would be fun for the kids if we could play fantasy football.
Yeah.
And so I got put in charge of one of the teams, and I loved it. It was just cool. It was kind of, I'd had an interest then in at that time I thought I wanted to become a stock trader.
Yeah.
And it seemed like the same kind of thing of, just pouring through numbers to understand what's going to happen in the future. And that's a pretty fascinating topic to a lot of people.
There's an irony of you being a successful podcaster and me being a successful stock trader, I think. I think that's kind of funny. So that leads you, so you're in high school, the transition from there, you get out of Excel. What happens then? Do you go to college, or what happens there that leads you to the Ticket?
Yeah, I went straight to college, and in college found the Ticket. By now that I had this interest in sports, so I'm listening all the time. The station, they have so many inside jokes, and it's such a complex culture.
The drops,
stuff on stuff.
Probably the most drops I've ever heard, because I know they have drops on Howard Stern, and people have heard of drops before. Not like this. It's drops that are 25 years old. That there's a story to the drop. There's a 30-minute story behind each one of the drops.
Yeah, no, it's sort of amazing the station has success because you usually want something that an audience can pick up quickly, and not have to invest a ton of time in order to be able to understand the joke.
Yeah.
But because everyone else, I think that their format succeeds because it's so apparent how much fun, even though you don't understand why they're laughing, the way that they're laughing, you immediately you want to understand.
Yes.
And so
you want to be part of the cool kids.
Yeah. Whatever time I got to put in to make it so that I get all of these jokes, I am ready to do that, and I'm enthusiastic about doing that. And that's definitely the reaction that I had, and it was basically just a several-year expedition to get to the point where I understand why everyone's laughing whenever they are.
It was several years, yeah.
And at that point, it's all I'm doing. Is like trying to find old stuff and listen to it. Constantly listening to the full broadcast day, or to the extent that I can. I don't wake up that early in the morning.
Yeah.
Just while I'm in college, anytime I'm out of class, it's on, and I'm got it in my headphones or whatever. And my favorite show at the time, the midday show, Bad Radio, announced that they had an intern lined up that dropped out.
Yeah.
And so they had a real sudden need, like someone to start tomorrow if you can.
Yeah.
And I sent an email to where they said to send an email. It conflicted with my college classes, but I was like, do I want to spend several more years? Or I think it would probably have been like 2 years from that point. So do I want to spend 2 years working on stuff that's hypothetically going to get me able to do the sort of job I want to do, or do I want to just start doing that job?
Yeah.
So I just moved my classes to night, which was a precursor to just stopping attempting school at all.
Yeah.
And went to work at the station and threw
were you at UTA?
100% of my effort into that. UNT.
UNT. Okay. That's where my dad
I
went.
Started out at the University of Dallas, then transferred to UNT.
Okay.
Whole thing. Yeah. But
you guys are not at Mockingbird at this point? Where were you?
Maple.
Maple. Oh, you're on Maple. When I was there, they were at Mockingbird Station. Then they moved to Maple. Then I think they're at Victory Plaza now.
Yeah.
So you're there, and you end up meeting your good friend now, Jake Kemp. What is that like? Are Jake and you both interns at the time? What's going on there?
So he had done an internship a couple years before me.
Yeah.
And the sort of step ladder is you become an intern, and then on the weekend they have board operators.
Yeah.
Like just basically the people who play the commercials, more or less. And so if you do a good job of the internship, they'll offer you a part-time position as a weekend board operator. And so he and I got hired as a weekend board operator on the same day. And then we're doing the same, like training shifts. And you start out as, I think it's like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Friday. And then Sundays, it's midnight to 6.
Yeah.
Or midnight to 8. I don't know. And so, one of us would get that shift, one of us would get the other. And then eventually we both progressed along to where we'd start still like dead of night shifts, but like I'm walking in to take over after he's done or something like that, And it was super organic. You're sitting there you're supposed to have like 15 minutes of overlap, of like making sure that everything's going fine or whatever. And in that time, you're making small talk, and it just seems like this is an interesting guy who has the same kind of views on life.
Yeah.
And, we found ourselves staying past the 15 minutes just to kind of like wrap up the conversation or whatever. And then it was like, well, maybe we should like do this elsewhere. Like this seems fun. It seems like we have a good vibe. Like let's buy some microphones, see if we can kind of start to teach ourselves how to do this sort of things. And that was 2009, 2010. So podcasting was much less big then than it is now. The number one thing you had to do whenever you told someone you had a podcast was explain what the concept of podcasting was.
I still have that. It's so crazy. So I post those clips on TikTok and those clips on Reels. Mm-hmm. I can't believe, Travis, you'll never believe this, how many people think that is the podcast. Wow. Not like the podcast is me talking to somebody for 60 seconds. Like I talked to somebody the other day, I love your podcast. I'm like, I just out of curiosity, where did you watch the podcast? Oh, I saw it on TikTok. I'm like, my podcast has never been on TikTok. I have 60-second clips on TikTok. It's like, oh, you mean, is it somewhere? Is it on YouTube? Are you asking me if my podcast is on YouTube? Wait, what? I'm so confused right now.
They just think the guest leaves after 60 seconds.
Seriously, they think I'm doing 60-second commercials with people or something, and then they leave. It's great because the traffic I get on TikTok is so much more than anywhere else. Like a lot of people actually, it's crazy to me. Like they don't even realize that this is like, sometimes I'll do 3 hours and they don't even grasp that. Oh, there's another thing I want to tell you about this really weird phenomenon. I'm sure you've had this happen to you before because I'm starting to have this happen to me now. So I've talked to Donovan on the phone before, and I've talked to
he's one of the hosts. Yeah,
he's one of the hosts at 13
at the ticket.
Yeah, Donovan Lewis. And then I've also talked to Dan McDowell and on the phone. And when we're having a conversation, I keep forgetting they don't know me because I've been listening to them for 20 years.
Yeah.
And in the same situation when I first started talking to you, I keep forgetting TC doesn't know me because I've been listening to TC for a decade. And it's one of these, because I have the same situation now where people have watched all my episodes and they come up and they just start conversations. And I keep forgetting like, oh, this dude is like, he's 16 episodes behind catching up and asking me questions about somebody. And I have to like be empathetic to that whole situation.
Yeah.
But you forget that like, I don't know this guy at all. You know what I'm saying? And he's like in the middle of it. He's telling me, he's in the middle of a story he's telling me. And I'm like, I don't know the beginning I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. And does this happen to you a lot?
Constantly. Yeah. I mean, it's nice like having it happen enough that it's, first of all, that anyone that anyone cares about your life is wonderful, right? Like that we're all searching for some kind of recognition that what we're doing is meaningful, right?
Yeah.
And that's more or less what you're receiving.
Well, any long-term fan of the ticket knows who you are.
Yeah, which is great.
And that's the crazy thing. It's not just the host, the board ops. Like almost every board op, if you give me a multiple choice question, was this guy a board op? I could tell you their names, and I don't know what they look like. I don't ever watch you guys on YouTube. So a lot of times, the first time I met what's his name? Craig in person, he doesn't look like what I think he looks. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. And hearing
Corby.
Whenever you're used to listening to someone on the radio, you don't see the words coming out of their mouth. Yeah. And whenever you hear those voices that you know so well, and it's actually emanating from a human being, it's an insane experience.
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, the same thing with Donovan. Donovan doesn't look like what I think he looks like specifically. Norm, obviously, we've all seen Norm because Norm's been on TV before, but like it's a little different with some of the other ones. Norm Hitchkus. But it is just one of these weird situations where I've never seen a cult-like following for a terrestrial radio station like what you guys have. I've never seen anything like, and I've lived in several cities. There's no corollary to you guys in Las Vegas. Everything here is sports betting. There's absolutely no corollary to you guys in Los Angeles. It's not. It's very cheesy, down the middle. Like very first tier analysis, level 1 analysis on Fox Sports, whatever. It's nothing like what you guys do. And the funny thing is, what I think it's interesting over at the ticket is that like, even though it's not mostly about sports, I respect Jake's opinion on things like about the Mavericks and the Cowboys and Bob Stern, especially Bob Stern, probably more than anyone else in sports broadcasting. Sure. As far as their expertise, as far as how much work they're willing to put in.
I think that the things you're talking about are related. And I think it goes back to that they are authentically themselves. They are genuine. And so, that, like, I think at a lot of stations, like I haven't listened to that much sports talk in LA, but if I had to give an answer on what I think is going wrong there versus what we're doing, is that I think in sports media, the kind of tone was set a long time ago that you're supposed to be presenting an altered version of yourself that's like more professional, more knowledgeable, more passionate than you actually are.
Yes.
And I think that audiences smell that. Like everyone has an ability to sense authenticity, and no one likes it, whatever they're not.
They have the sports announcer voice.
Yeah, like absolutely.
Dan McDowell does not have the sports announcer voice, but I love listening to him. Corby Davidson does not have the sports announcer voice, but I love listening to him. But that's genuinely who they are. Like they tape their kids and they bring that to the story as well. And the genuineness
that creates the connection, but then also, because you can trust them on those sort of things, that Bob is telling you his Cowboys analysis for the only reason being that it's because it's what he seriously believes. Yeah. And there's enough people on the station who are somewhat flippant about how much they pay attention, that that if Bob didn't really care and didn't watch the games that much, he's in an environment where he can say that. Yeah. If you're at a station in LA, not to keep on, shitting on them, but if you're at a station in LA, I don't think that you can feel comfortable being like, Yeah, I was kind of flipping in and out of the game. You guys tell me what happened.
Yeah.
You
can't do that there.
Even if that's the truth, you have to say whatever. And so because, Bob can say that if he wants to, but then doesn't, that this is what he actually does think. And, it's just, in order to care about someone's opinion, you just have to have trust and respect, and they give you that, and so you give it back in return.
Oh, I mean, Gordon Keith frequently talks about not really caring about Gordon Keith, Kennedy assassination enthusiast. He frequently talks about not really caring that much about
what
sports.
Do you think happened there?
I agree with Gordon almost completely. But then it's not that I am very much, I believe in conspiracies, like what the firebombing of Tulsa, Oklahoma, that black neighborhood in 1921, that's a conspiracy we don't talk about. The fact that public education is funded through property taxes, that's a conspiracy we don't talk about enough. The fact that we actually did bring crack cocaine into this country in the 90s because we were trying to, support the Nicaraguans, that's a conspiracy we don't talk about. Do I actually think that the CIA killed Kennedy? No, Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy. Because here's the problem, what I have, because I've heard Oliver Stone came to one of my events, and I've heard him talk about this. It was shout out to Steve Orozco, Smash Global. So he believes that there's no way that Oswald could have made the shot. You've been up there. I could have hit Kennedy with a football from the 6th floor. It was not that difficult of a shot for a car that's going 2 miles an hour directly away from you. You have a bolt action. I believe it was a 308. And this guy's left-handed firing down to his right. This was not a difficult shot to make. And he had 3 rounds to shoot it. I have this discussion with people and they're like, no, it had to be more than that. And I think one of the problems is, especially with conspiracy theories, and obviously I'm learning more about this, having a debate with flat earthers, is the idea that the two sides have to equal out. And Lee Harvey Oswald does not equal John F. Kennedy. Does that make sense? Lee Harvey Oswald is just a Marine Corps nutbag who went and defected to Russia, came back, and he, there's very few Marines that you would put up on that 6th floor and be like, could you make this shot? And every one of them, even the ones who work in personnel, would have been like, yeah, I could make this shot. This is not a difficult shot.
There's a book out there. It's called Mortal Error. It's by a ballistics expert named Bonar Menninger. And it's the kind of thing where I'm going to try and explain it really briefly, but people never hear me say this the first time. And they're like, oh yeah, TC, you're obviously right. But I'm giving you the name and everything so that people can look into it. But his ballistics analysis, if you're trying, everyone knows about the magic bullet stuff. If you want something that does answer every single question raised about those sorts of things, it's that Oswald fired on Kennedy from the 6th floor. And the trailing Secret Service agent was carrying his weapon improperly. He jumped because he was startled, and it went off.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have happened too, but I think you would have noticed. The problem with that is that the slug stays inside the body. That would be something you'd have to cover up. 308 rounds, they go in you, but they don't stay on you. 9mm rounds or 45 caliber rounds, they tend to stay in people, depending on where they pass through. So I don't know.
I do not have a sufficient recall of the details, but I am confident that I think that you would love the book. I don't know if it's on audiobook.
I will definitely go check it out.
But yeah, if it is, I would put that at the top of the list.
Have you read The Accommodation?
Yeah.
You have tell me about that book. So that book has to do with the segregation in Dallas in the 1960s. Is that when it was?
Yeah, I think 50s is when the bombings were occurring.
Yeah,
but it takes a wide view. I mean, there's a chapter on slavery in Texas. But yeah, it's a Dallas journalist. He's originally from Detroit, but he started working in Dallas in the 1980s. His name is Jim Schutz. And he's a really interesting guy. I think he's one of the best people that's ever covered Dallas. He has the same kind of ticket level authenticity of, that he's telling you exactly what he thinks. He's a sharp guy. And in a way that, the rest of the local media, whatever, anyone doing any kind of media, certainly including me and you, has an agenda.
Of course.
But some of those are stronger than others. And Jim's lines up with mine enough that, I like his work a lot.
Yeah.
But just the basic thesis of the book is that the way that race relations have unfolded in Dallas is somewhat unique. And I think that it's right to look at it as a city by city thing rather than I don't know how you would measure accurately the level of racism in America, right?
Right.
Whereas like a city, like you're talking about how you treat your neighbors. You can say like how you treat your neighbors.
I think you can accurately measure a rate of segregation in a city. And to all the developed cities I've been in the world, Dallas is still one of the most segregated cities I've ever been to.
Yeah. So Jim's thesis on how that came to be is that desegregation and integration in other cities came about as the result of specific precipitating events where there was things that happened that you did not have the option to tolerate.
Yeah.
You know, like the Freedom Rides. There's the PBS American Experience series. There's a episode on the Freedom Rides that I think is one of the most well done pieces of television I've ever seen, and just gives you a real close-up, gritty details of how the people on the Freedom Rides were treated, and it's stunning. You know, they're just being beaten nearly to death just for stepping off of a bus.
Yeah.
There was a mob that shot out their tires and set fire to the bus and tried to trap them inside. Like the only reason everyone didn't die was just because I think that it was like at a gas station. The daughter of the owner of the gas station, I think, like pushed them aside. I'm trying to remember. It's been a couple of years since I've seen it. But so that kind of stuff where you're talking about out and out attempts at mass murder or, you know, successfully the Tulsa thing.
Yeah.
That is just mass murder.
Yeah.
That sort of thing came close to happening in Dallas. But every time it came close, there was an effort by city leaders to step in and say, if we go past the line here, it's going to be out of our hands a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're just, you know, we're going to have to answer to the federal government in a way that we don't want to, because then it's going to be worse off for us. There's a keen interest in making it so that people felt like you could do business in Dallas.
Yes.
You know, that if it's a sort of lawless city where they're so busy fighting over, you know, who's what race, that we can't carry on normal commerce.
Right.
Like all we really care about is getting rich.
Yes.
So like
that is a common tenet of Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. And like, you know, we definitely don't want people who don't look like us to get rich. Like it's certainly their attitude at the time, but like, let's focus on the getting rich. So they would make accommodations,
you
know? The specific thing that he's looking at is in the 1950s, Oak Cliff at this time, Oak Cliff's been through many cycles, and at this cycle, it's all white.
Yeah, Mike Reiner's living. Mike Reiner's born in 1950. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Yeah. So I think that sounds right. He grew up in Oak Cliff.
Yeah,
Mike Reiner, he's the creator of The Ticket, the founder of Sports Radio 1310 The Ticket.
Yeah, and he went to a high school that's now known, Kimball, as like that's one of the all black high schools.
Yes.
But
Kimball, Carter, Lincoln, Madison. I'm trying to think of all black high schools. So Skyline's not all black. Woodrow Wilson was mostly Hispanic. Adamson's mostly
nowadays all those high schools have a large 40% of Dallas is Hispanic.
Yeah.
So
that's another thing. Like the difference between Dallas and New Orleans, Jackson, Mississippi, Atlanta, Georgia, those places is we have a massive Hispanic population. Mm-hmm. And when desegregation is happening, it's happening in the Deep South first. We're not the Deep South. We're more like the Southwest. And so, I can see like not quite the same level of fire bombings and, race riots, but still to this day, I still see the city as like, I do not see Atlanta, Georgia being as segregated as Dallas, Texas. Just something that I've noticed. It's one of these things where every black friend that I had lived below 30 and every white friend I have lived above 30, period.
But yeah. So there's like South Dallas, I think is where like the black neighborhoods were initially. And then they're starting to spread to Oak Cliff.
Yeah.
And every time a black family moves into a white neighborhood, there's a giant conflict about it. And these conflicts escalate to the point where there was a group that was going around and tossing dynamite into homes of black residents that moved into white neighborhoods. And the city leaders, stepped in, and that's where the can't be harming commerce guys stuff starts. And did a full investigation, had a blue ribbon panel to figure out, get to the bottom of this. And it basically ended with patsies. That they found the guys who did it, who tossed the dynamite, and then made sure not to ask any questions about whether or not anyone had put them up, who bought the dynamite, and we certainly don't want to ask what your connection is to various church leaders.
Yeah.
Or like local officials, like if we have, knowledge that you are close friends with them, that's kind of between you and them.
Right.
And by the way, the Blue Ribbon Panel is shutting down now, you know, and their best accommodation there though was that like, we're going to hang it on these guys. We're going to go no further than that. And we do have a parcel of land that, some well-connected city leaders own, and we're going to create a neighborhood. It's called Hamilton Park.
Yeah.
It's like 75 and Walnut Hill, kind of. Or maybe a little, 75 and Forest, more like. Where...
There's a Home Depot there now, I think.
Hamilton Park's still there.
Yeah.
But yeah. Where it's a black neighborhood that people, they're like, more or less like... You can live somewhere just here, like just this parcel. Yeah. Like here are your boundaries, and there's no white homes there currently. Yeah. So we'll build some homes there, and the black people can live in them, and that's how we're going to do this. Yeah. And so it's stuff like that, where they had no interest in giving full justice. They had no interest in saying, how about you just treat these people as people, because we're all human beings and we're all equal under the eyes of God? Like none of that sort of stuff, but just like, what's the least we can do to solve this problem?
What's the accommodation we can have for you?
Yeah. And so, because they never had the sort of large scale racial riots that other cities in the South had, there was no backlash sort of thing. Every time it got close to that point, it's how can we pull it back and do the minimum amount? And you don't want racial riots, but like you do have to have a response to them once they occur. Yeah. And that would entail the sort of things that make it so that you end up with a more desegregated city. And by just never provoking that, Dallas was able to retain the level of segregation that it has. And it's terrible for everyone. This is whatever. I don't think that we came on here to like preach my preferred political system.
No, actually, we are going to get specifically into your political system.
But it's better for everyone. Like the area south of 30 is, I think it's the majority of the landmass of the city.
Yes.
And whenever you look at, just
15% of the population of the county lives below 30, and 85% of the landmass of the county, or the landmass of the city, is below 30. 85% of the city lives above 30. Highland Park, where Hillcrest is, all those areas, Addison.
And whenever you talk about, living in a cool city, it's not super complicated in some ways. Like you're gonna like living in your city if it's well run, and like if they just have a lot of money for services. Yeah. If every park is badass, if all the streets are paved, awesome. Like there's a lot more to your life than how well the streets are paved and how good the parks are. But like the city doesn't really control that, and so like it just having under the things the city can control, being able to execute those well, and just do everything the city can to make it so that everyone living there is having a good life and has good opportunities. You just want to have a lot of tax base to do that. Yeah. And what they're done right now by forcing, whatever, it's the slanted floor thing. So it's not forcing, but making it so that it's likely that lots of people will live south of 30, but then there's no jobs south of 30. So, anyone who wants to make something of themselves has to be willing to drive an hour north through heavy traffic to do whatever. And, so then you're losing certain people who probably would be happy to lead a productive life if you made it easier for them to do so. If you told me that the only way for me to have a job was to drive a certain number of hours, there is a number at which you'd be like, fuck it, dude, I'm just not trying, right? Yeah. Like if you had to drive 5 hours for any job, I think that I probably wouldn't have a job, right? Yeah, right. And everyone's line is different. And if your actual interest is having the most number of productive members of society as possible, you want to make it so that even if their line is like pretty picky, that it's still possible for them to go out and do that. And of course, like I said, everyone has control of their own lives, and you would like to see these people have a drive and determine, but whatever. I don't think that it's a productive attitude for a city to be like, Well, I'm just going to sit around and wait for them to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps,
right?
Like, to the extent that anyone has ever done that ever, right?
Yeah.
But it's good if we can put lots of plentiful jobs near where the population center is,
right?
And we've failed to do that in large ways, and that does cost everyone. Like like I live in a cool part of town, and I love it and everything, but like I'm going to have shittier parks because of these decisions, whatever.
Yeah.
Parks is just not like the highest stakes in the world. I'm trying to think of something else, but I don't know. I didn't even know we were going to talk about this stuff today.
Public education. All right. So
yeah.
Let's talk about the ticket again. Going back to the ticket. What is it like working there? So you're there for 10 years?
Yes.
What is how does progression work there? What is it like off air? Who are you friends with? Who do you love listening to? I know you love Bad Radio, Bob and Dan. What is that whole experience like for you? And also the drops. There are several famous drops of you. We can talk about that too.
Sure. Yeah. So it was amazing. It was a dream come true working there. Like the thing that I wanted most in the world as a 19-year-old or whatever.
Yeah.
Was to make it so these guys are my friends.
Yeah.
Like I heard them and I'm like, I just really want to be friends with them. They sound cool.
Yeah, I remember that. I felt the same way.
Yeah, and I was right. It is cool to be friends with them. You know, like I now do count some of them as close friends, and it's the best part of my life. Yeah. Like all the relationships I made there, like not necessarily, I mean, like Dan McDowell is definitely certainly a close personal friend, and so is Jake and that kind of stuff. But just the third order people, someone like you, obviously, like if we only know each other because you listen to my podcast, and I said on my podcast, hey, I'm going to be in Las Vegas. If anyone lives in Vegas, hit me up. And I love being friends with you.
This is like 4 years ago.
Yeah,
I hit you up on Twitter. I remember that. Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of like, there's several of my best friends are people that they started emailing me about the podcast. It seemed to me like they had interesting stuff to say, and I was like, be happy to discuss this over lunch sometime or something. And then it just kind of goes from there. And I mean, my wife listened to the podcast before she met me.
Really?
Yeah.
Your wife listened to IJB before.
I mean, it had only been out
IJB
for like,
is called It's Just Banter. That's his podcast.
I mean, we started publishing episodes, I think, in like February maybe of 2010, and she and I met in April. We met the night that Dez got drafted.
Okay,
that's how I always.
That's how you remember. That's how I remember things too. Yeah, I remember. What's his name? Alonzo Mourning being traded to the Heat. That's when I was working at the Ticket. I remember that's like one of the first weeks I was there. That's how I remember.
Yeah. But so we'd only been doing it for a couple months, but she was a big, she liked the Ticket, so she'd heard about the show.
Yeah.
And so as far as my experience of working there, it more or less is the foundation of my adult life. So, that's awesome. Having that many people listening to you, especially being like a secondary person there where they're showing up to hear what Bob and Dan have to say. And Bob and Dan have always been really awesome about they're interested in the contributions of the other people that are on the show.
Yeah.
But some of the listeners, and I get it, because whenever I listen to shows, I often only want to hear the host comments too. So they're asking me a question or like kind of looking at me through the whatever to make a comment, and speaking up, and then once Twitter comes around, like whenever I started, Twitter didn't exist, but once it became a big thing, it's just you catch it. At this point, I really zen about it, and I'm happy to have like gone through that process. Like when Aaron Rodgers lost on Saturday.
Yeah.
It was the dumbest thing. Like I'm not standing by it as like a great content, but I posted the shitty vaccine joke, and because it included a mention of vaccines, then there's like 20 people that are like jumping in with their conspiracy, whatever, like their vaccine opinions. Like one guy definitely was, fucking, what are you even worried about health for? You're fat. I'm like, yeah, great point. Maybe I just shouldn't say anything about anything at all.
It's right, man. He should have his opinion. He should eat clay in order to get inoculated. That's absolutely fantastic. I think Aaron Rodgers has it figured out for sure.
But yeah, so I mean, what I've learned, like, that tweet got some engagement.
Yeah.
I now understand it as like more or less a mathematical thing of if enough people see the thing that you've written, then some percentage of them are going to have an extreme reaction.
But the extreme reaction is more likely to comment. You write things all the time I agree with. I'll like it, but I'm not going to comment, right?
Yeah.
The other day I posted, and it's kind of out of context, but so there's no liquid options market on cryptocurrency right now. You can buy and sell options on crypto, but it's not liquid. And in order to short cryptocurrency, you have to put up like 90% notional. Point being, I don't want to get too complicated. The point being, it's very expensive for a fund in order to use options or shorting in order with their cryptocurrency fund. So almost no funds short crypto or use options to hedge their position. Therefore, since you can't hedge crypto, you cannot call it a hedge fund. That was the point I made. The hate I got on TikTok and these other places was unimaginable. I had attacked their religion, their crypto. By the way, I'm very pro crypto. Dogecoin went down a bunch yesterday. I just bought a bunch more. I'm very pro crypto. What I was expressing to people is that basically they're using the word hedge fund because it's a cool word. It's a buzzword.
Everyone knows that hedge funds make money.
They know the hedge because they watch Billions. But it's not a hedge fund because there's no hedge. That's the thing. Hedge.
These words have meanings.
They have meaning. So what they're describing is a long, short, speculative fund, but they're calling it a hedge fund. And it's not only is it not actually a hedge fund because you can't hedge, it's not a hedge fund because it's not regulated by the Security and Exchange Commission because it's not a regulated equity. So I try to make this very correct explanation. And the hate I got from crypto people was unimaginable. And the thing is that they were wrong. And then what made it even crazier is at the end, there's no, the pattern reading that people do, the chart reading, there's no science behind it. It's been tested over 10,000 times. They actually give random lines to people who do technical analysis, and these people are pointing out cup and saucer patterns and death crosses and things that aren't there, like legitimately random patterns, like proving that their analysis is not real. Technical analysis doesn't work, has never worked. And when I said that on there, there's like, no, you're crazy. You should watch Jim so-and-so and see all the money that he makes. I'm like, no, he makes money from selling you a TA product, but he doesn't make money from TA. And it was like I had attacked their religion, and they came after me just like the flat earthers. It was crazy to watch how mad these people got whenever I went. Look, if you say something to me, if you tell me that gravity isn't real, I'm not going to get mad at you. I'm just going to express to you the proof that I have that gravity is real. When you get mad, you're coming off sides because I said something that attacks your religion. Like, listen, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. They got problems. You know what I'm saying? They got, if you tell me they got problems, I will. You're right. They probably given all that money to Zeke Elliott and to Jalen Smith. We had the conversation about this. Wouldn't it be nice to have Brandon Jones there at the other corner? Wouldn't that be great? I don't know if you guys know Chidibia Awuzie. I think he's second team All Pro. I don't know if wouldn't that be great to have him there instead of
second team All Pro.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he didn't. But I know he had a really good year this year.
I didn't know he was balling.
He had a really good year. But don't quote me on that. I thought I saw that somewhere.
Okay.
I know he graded really well. My point is, like, wouldn't it be great to have that second corner instead of Anthony Brown? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be great to have some, backup offensive linemen instead of paying your running back who does Molly all the time and gets drunk out in Dallas? Wouldn't that be great to do that instead? Wouldn't it be great to spend money and use I know the Cowboys have problems, but if you're an Eagles fan and you tell me Cowboys have problems, I'm going to tell you to go fuck yourself. It just kind of depends on the narrative that you want to hear.
Yeah, this is kind of a simple statement, but I think that it seems to me like most people don't anticipate it enough when thinking about public discourse. Every opinion that someone can hold, someone does hold.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And so if you have a sufficiently large audience, then you're going to find that person. Like if you had made your crypto hedge fund points and the only people had seen it is like 5 of your closest friends, then they probably would nodded along and been like, well, yeah, you're just like reading definitions, dude. Like, of course you're right.
Yeah.
But like whenever the audience reaches a certain size, then you're going to catch one of the guys that has
an
extreme opinion.
And they're the loudest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. Like totally. Like this would be a good habit, like a good like positivity kind of thing to like go out into the world and every time you listen to a podcast episode that you send them a little message of like, hey bud, great job.
Yeah.
But what kind of freak does that?
Nobody gets. I get a like. No one I know. I get a like. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I get a like. If you don't like it, then you talk about my mom. If you do like it, I get a like.
Yeah.
That's all I get is a like.
Yeah. And so you see that cycle enough. And I think we started off talking about this, talking about the ticket. And so that was just training of, like kind of understanding that cycle and, coming to see that while there certainly are, like some folks that have these extreme opinions about, the things I say, and then by extension about me, that, it's more or less just residue of success kind of stuff. And, whatever. It shouldn't be used to entirely brush off. If the criticism sounds valid, like if you read it and something clicks in you where you're like, yeah, I'm afraid that is true, then you should examine that.
Yeah. And I've definitely done that before. I've definitely had criticisms on comments where they're being, open and honest about something. And I'm like, okay, I can see that.
I'm very interested in personal growth.
For sure.
I want to be as good, like in order to do the things I want to have in life, have the sort of life I want to have, I need to develop these skills, right? And so if someone's giving me the gift of letting me know where the development is most necessary, I'd be crazy to turn that down. But, you do have to separate that from like, just, there's no, even if I did there is no perfect, right? Like even if I did everything as good as I possibly could, given, like what the resources I have, there's still going to be someone who doesn't like it. So.
Yeah. So I'm not a dogmatic person. I don't, have a specific political dogma that I listen to. I read Ayn Rand and I read Margaret Atwood.
There's just to wrap up it.
Yeah.
There was a kid at the school. Who someone was like, kind of telling him like, "Hey, dude, like, why'd you do that? You're gonna get yelled at." He just comes back, positive or negative. It's just attention.
It's just attention. Okay, so that kind of leads me to my next point. You and Jake start your podcast because you guys have extremely politically progressive beliefs. I listen to all your episodes. I'm not as far to the left as you guys are, but whenever I want,
come join us.
Whenever I want an opinion or to understand what that side of the aisle is thinking, I would go to you. You'd probably be the first person I would go to for a borderline. I mean, tell me if I'm incorrect here. Socialist viewpoint as far as economics is concerned. Am I close?
Sure. Yeah. The word means different things to every single person. So I don't know that it's like a descriptive term that's very good, but certainly. Yeah.
So I listened to that. Now I also listen to other people. Like I read Jordan Peterson's book the other day. Didn't really like it. I like Jordan. I listen to Jordan Peterson, but I don't. His book is very much just a diatribe of just like run-on sentences. I did not understand the book at all.
I think everyone's saying he's fallen off a bit.
Is he? Well, I know he just lost his tenure at the university.
Really?
Yeah, he just got terminated a couple days ago.
Prayers up.
Yeah, he just left. I listen to Gad Sad, who's pretty politically progressive. We're gonna have Cobra Tate on here. I'm gonna have you.
Hell yeah.
I'm gonna have you ask me some questions for me to ask Andrew Tate when he comes on. The God, right? Tate. So the point is,
just let him know I'm a fan.
I'm friend. So I'm probably the only person who's friends with Nicole Arbor and Emily Sears, and they're not big fans of each other, right? One's pretty conservative, the other one's politically pretty progressive. You and Andrew Tate do not see eye to eye on several things.
No. Don't tell him that.
Don't tell him that. Tell him you're the biggest fan. You're the biggest fan. Yeah. You're one of your podcasts. The cover photo is Andrew Tate and Alex Jones having a conversation with each other. Can you?
That's the life skills cover art. Yeah.
So now my question is this, right? So you, when you're at Sports Radio 13 on the ticket, you are still in a red area of the country.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Dallas.
Dallas is blue.
Yeah.
But this is bigger than that, like the whole state.
Yeah.
And you guys, there are some people with some politically progressive views, although you and Jake are further to the left than them. So you go to IJB so that you can express these things off the air. Like what is the belief here? Because I know the Thursday podcast you do is like more your political opinions.
Yeah, it's kind of what we started out intending to do. I don't know that we stick to it very much.
Yeah.
I mean, as we go along, I think both like at a certain point, like we could, I guess, weigh in on like every issue, but I think that for the most part, we did enough of that sort of talk that people know where, like, it certainly sounds like you have an idea of where we stand on this kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. We always want to be iterating and changing and talking about what's interesting to us now rather than being a slave to what was interesting to us a couple of years ago.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that we just do a lot less politics talk, period.
Yeah.
Because it's beating a dead horse.
It does become a beating a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that certainly some part of doing the podcast was that I don't like, I have strong political opinions, but I think it's fucked up if someone turns into, to listen to what people think about the Cowboys and they're having this stuff shoved down their throat. I don't think that's good.
Well, I thought that's what the free episodes you did was that, and then the other ones were more political opinions.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like, not talking about it on the ticket.
Right.
Like, that's why I would try. Yeah, I mean, whatever. My self-control comes and goes, but
right.
the attempt. But yeah, if you're interested in my political program, I had a friend suggest to me there was an NPR, I think their Throughline podcast did a series on capitalism. Did you happen to catch that?
I did not.
It seemed like the sort of thing that you would like.
Yeah.
Because it was bringing in all voices kind of stuff. And so he asked me to listen to it, and I was happy to. And I don't know that like I agreed with everything that like the people that were the left representatives had to say.
And you've brought that up a lot. There's a lot of times where you're very critical of like Gavin Newsom in California.
Oh yeah. I don't know that he counts as left. Yeah, I'm sure that like people on the right think he does.
Let me say something. People in California believe he is. No, but like you are very critical of certain people on the left.
He's a fucking winery guy that's there to represent the interests of the other winery guys.
Right.
Like that's got nothing to do with fucking me.
Shout out to Governor Newsom. He's coming to one of my events here coming up pretty soon. Yeah.
Ask him how his wine business is
I
doing.
definitely will. I'm going to interview him. Yeah.
Okay. But so there was a moment on that podcast where, it had been recorded since the pandemic started, and they played a clip from a nurse who, had just gotten off a shift and was breaking down, like half crying in the clip, and just basically was like, was describing her life of she could keep going to her job and continue to make the money she'd been making and be able to make house payments and everything else. But that if she did that, she felt fairly certain that she was going to catch COVID. And I think that she, like her partner that she was living with, had some real risks, had, scarred lungs or something.
Comorbidities got.
Yeah. And so she's like, so I can keep going to this job and catch something that I feel has got a good chance of killing my partner, or I can quit the job and then I am not making money, and I'm going to be pushed out into this world where, there's eviction moratoriums or whatever. But I if anyone thinks that no one got evicted during this time, I would like to dissuade them of that idea. I'm pretty sure some people got evicted. So like just basically saying like, these are my two choices. Once we're pushed out, like we're probably catching COVID in the streets. So like, the system I am living in has failed to provide me with something that doesn't give this. And just the basic thing is that this woman, she is crying and like she is just pouring her heart out. And they get done playing the clip, and the right-wing guy's like, well, she probably should have gotten some better skills at some point. And like I don't know that like anything he says is, there's certainly some truth in everything anyone's saying, right?
Yeah.
But like, I just watched the way that he reacted to that on a human level. He did not connect with her pain. He didn't think that it was interesting or that it was, something that he should internalize. And I fundamentally believe that there are some people out there like that, and we should just make sure that they don't get to make decisions about what happens to other people.
Right.
It starts from whenever you hear about other people's situations, you need to be empathetic.
Right.
And, I think that a good civil society that treats all of its members with justice requires that the people in those decision-making points are the kinds of people who just care about other humans and have a big heart about these things. If you start from there, obviously you can get into details and you can get into disagreements and everything like that. But I would just say that's my foundational belief. You just start from there. If you just find the people who care about other people, work from that point.
Nice. Okay. I had never heard of Alex Jones until IGB.
Really?
Yes. And I lived in Austin for a long time. I had not heard of Alex Jones. I had no idea this. It didn't denier, all that kind of stuff. Can you describe your show's relationship with Alex Jones? There are several. One of your intros is literally Alex Jones talking.
Yeah. Whenever I think it was one of the Trump presidential debates, I think it was Darren Ravel had the tweet where he's like, I weep for our nation, but this is tremendous content. That's my life every day.
Yeah. Like you were sad. You had mentioned before you were a little sad when Trump went out of office because of the content that you were going to be missing out on.
It was tremendous content.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
The Stormy Daniels. That's actually how we met. I had done an interview with Stormy Daniels.
That's
and I
right.
sent it to you guys.
The first time,
Yes.
you contacted us.
Yes, and my intention was, obviously AVN is digital this year. They're not here to introduce. I was going to introduce you to Stormy this week. She's there every year at AVN.
Would have loved to.
Yeah. And that's how I ended up meeting you guys.
I did have the opportunity to see your dance on the Make America Horny
tour.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. That's great, man. What capitalism? How can you not love capitalism when you see something like that? You know, she had sex with the president and now she's famous. That's unbelievable. So can you talk a little bit? So Alex Jones, your relationship with like the show brings him up frequently. What is it? It almost in like a comical way. I honestly did not understand like until I went and watched his stuff, how manic he gets and how crazy. And then I watched the Joe Rogan interviews and I'm like, what in the world is going on here?
Yeah, it's psychological. Like just this, you're very interested in like behavioral science kind of stuff, and understanding.
I think it's actually dangerous what we're doing. Whether or not I agree or don't agree with his beliefs, he admits to being abused and he admits to having psychological problems. And for either political party to put him in the forefront of any argument is dangerous and irresponsible, and it's actually, I think, negligent. I think it's really like he is not, and he by his own admission talks about having drinking problems. Like it's bothersome to me that we
on that one Rogan was pretty directly referencing that he had admitted to like an Adderall addiction.
Yeah,
and Alex is like,
not talking about that right now. He doesn't need to admit to an Adderall addiction. I can see his eyes.
I know what you mean.
But like to me, it was like. What happens is you take the worst of the opposite point of the opposing view, and then you say this is what all of you are like, and that's why I thought it was just really fucked up. What they were like, I feel like Alex Jones needs help, and so when I see that, my idea is I'm actually afraid for him. And then I see, well, both sides are now holding him up to this incredible, one side is like, this man is the Antichrist, and the other side is like, this man is like our leader. And it just, the whole thing is like, no, this man needs a little bit of help and he needs to chill out for a little bit and maybe get some psychological counseling.
Yeah, trying to like fit him into the political system, I think just causes a lot of problems.
You understand exactly my point.
He doesn't,
he does not fit in the political, his opinions.
He's got his own fucking thing going on, dude.
Correct.
He's working out, like the abuse he suffered in real time by talking about the lizard people. Yeah. And unless either the political parties are interested in weighing in on whether or not our government leaders are actually lizard people in shape-shifting form, then Alex is kind of on a separate path.
Well, I mean, but the problem is I have family members who have told me water makes people homosexual because of stuff that Alex is saying. And
that's just correct.
Exactly right.
It's not water. Like, so one of his big famous clips that we laugh at is because I think someone like turned it into a song.
Gay frogs.
Make the frickin' frogs gay, and that's a classic. That's a great distillation of the whole Alex Jones thing, because his position is that there is a chemical company out there using a pesticide that runs into the water that causes frogs to turn gay. And that they are attempting to do that because there's some sort of agenda where they think it's good if more things are gay.
Right.
And until
I believe that the frogs, because they're, what are they called? What type of, they're not reptiles. What are frogs? Can somebody help me here?
Amphibians.
They can actually switch gender. I think that's what he's talking about. The frogs can switch gender because of the chemical, not actually be homosexual.
I think there is some kind of, it hurt, because the thing I'm going to say is that until you get to, there's a cabal that wants more things to be gay.
Yeah.
It's fucking true.
Yeah, no, dude. There. By the way, those of you who follow Alex Jones, there is a nuclear reactor at the University of Texas at Austin. That is a true story. That did happen, but they're not using it to hide the aliens like what he's saying. That he takes 10% of the truth, and then the problem is whenever I have my friends that are like Alex Jones, everything he says is true, and then I bring up things that are obviously not true, and they just do not want to hear that part of it. Like none of that part of it is true, but everything else, clearly they were eating children up in with George Bush, and what was that? Was that thing that where he makes the videos about or whatever, or some, I can't remember what something Grove.
Yeah, Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove. That whole thing
north of San Francisco.
Yeah, for sure. And like to some people, that is 100% ironclad proof that all those people eat children, and I'm just like, man, I don't know how to have a conversation with you. When you say things like this, like it's crazy. It's a cool video, awesome. It doesn't prove anything.
To me, it's about the evidentiary standard, of like, so you got the things you can prove, like this Bohemian Grove exists, like there are people there.
I'm sure there's some terrible people there. I have no doubt whatsoever.
Yeah, but it's like some people say like, well, we've never like seen a bunch of stuff on the inside, so I got my suspicions, but I don't know what they're doing in there.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, well, I mean, you got all this. Obviously, they're abusing children. And like, they're working off the same evidence, right? Like, you're looking at the same set of facts. And some people are willing to be like, well, these facts to me prove that this is going on. Whereas other people are like, I need more before I'm going to say prove.
My question is, when Oprah Winfrey and Ellen DeGeneres and Tom Hanks don't end up going to jail, then what happens?
Yeah.
Do you reevaluate the prediction that you made 100% that they were going to jail?
For most people, it appears no.
When they don't go to jail, do you then reevaluate? And then you don't, and that's the problem. Like this is my issue. Is like when you spread this false information, then it proves to be false. Who's held accountable? Nobody, because these are anonymous comments that you're reading, and so that part is scary to me. By the way, just so we're clear, I'm not a Biden supporter. I am not politically progressive. I'm very much moderate. But I just both sides. Whenever I hear things that are just spread that are just not true.
Big Kamala Harris fan.
Yeah, huh? Are you? No, I'm not. I don't. But to be fair, Kamala Harris prosecuted people for crimes with marijuana, right?
Yeah.
This was an issue you had with her, somebody on the political left.
Yeah, no, I mean, most DAs in the country, they're in the business of putting people in cages. Like,
right.
Yeah, whatever. I don't mean to be shrill about this stuff, but I would prefer that the minimum number of people be in cages at all times because, whatever, for a lot of reasons, but I've been close to the situation myself, and I'm just letting you know it's a lot worse than whatever you think like, whatever. I mean, there's people with far more experience and can talk to it better than I can.
Well, but he got going back to Alex Jones. He said that was faked.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he claims that it's more nuanced than that. But but
now he's walking those beliefs back.
Yeah,
I had Flat Earth.
He's done a lot of damage control.
I had Flat Earth Dave on. He still believes that is fake. By the way, I'm blanking out the word when we post this on YouTube. I'm not posting. I'm not taking the fucking heat for that.
Okay.
A school shooting in the Northeast. You guys can figure out which one it is. So when you see that, do you think that's dangerous? So, for instance, do you agree with me? Even though I think what happened, January 7th last year, the storming the Capitol, I don't think the president should lose his Twitter account. Do you think he should lose his Twitter account for that?
I don't know. It seems kind of insane to me that people talk about it that like there's this level of focus on it. Like Twitter doesn't matter. I mean, like obviously it matters, like especially if it's the president, but also like it doesn't. Like
but you don't think it sets a precedent? I don't agree with a lot of his politics, but I don't think he should have lost his Twitter account.
I don't know. I don't like
30-day suspension. I'm fine. Take the tweet down. I'm fine with that. Permanent ban.
Whenever I hear any strong opinion expressed about that on either side, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't feel like I can get worked up in either direction enough to like there's a lot of stuff where I look at a matter and how I feel like stands out to me strongly, and this is the opposite of that.
Got it.
Like whatever you guys think, I don't care.
Another guy that I had occurrences with, another original conversation we had was Jacob Wohl.
Yeah.
So can you talk to me? Who is Jacob Wohl? So I met Jacob Wohl because he did interviews on a Tasty Trade, the financial network that I work with. He was very young. He was a teenager, and he was already managing money for a fund. And then later on came up with some extremely radical political beliefs and some extremely, you go ahead and describe.
I'm never even like positive what his political beliefs are, because he seems to kind of like dabble. I think it seems like he's just trying to get attention / money.
So the what was it? Pelosi paying the male stripper. Is that the one?
Yeah, I think he had a Pelosi one. I don't remember that one as clearly. It was definitely Elizabeth Warren had like a Marine.
Sorry.
That she had hired. That this was his claim, and like he's like puts the Marine out. But just he does these publicity events.
We're talking about Jacob Wohl does these publicity events.
Yeah, Jacob Wohl will do things where he sends out a press release, letting him that he's gonna have this press conference. Usually it's in front of like just like on the steps of like his townhouse or whatever. Or I think it's like his political benefactor or his monetary benefactor's townhouse or something.
Yeah.
There's some guy that I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but and just basically pays people to lie about sensational stuff.
Yeah.
And it's awesome because he's really bad at it. Like, everyone likes feeling like they're smart, right? And the easiest way to do that is just, to see people who are dumber than you. And whenever he tries to execute these things, he belongs strongly in the dumber than most viewers group. Because the press will like ask just the basic questions about like, so how many times did he do this with Senator Warren? And the person will be like, 6.
Yeah.
Like they're just not prepared for any of it. Like there's just there is no thought of step 2. It's just, well, we're going to hire someone and get him to go and do his press conference about Elizabeth Warren. And like, do you want to prep him for any questions? No, we don't need to do that. I think the thing will just stand on itself. Fuck it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Just the seams that appear. I think at some point there was like a protest group that showed up and, like where they'd made like a song about whatever thing that was going on, and they're just performing it in the background of the press conference the entire time. Just it's the most wheels off experience possible.
You're like me. You just like the chaos. I love the chaos. I love the crazy.
Just want to watch train wrecks all day.
Exactly. That makes so much fun, especially sanctimonious people with the train wreck. This is the reason why I try to not judge people, because I know someday I'm going to get caught in a bathroom with the wrong person. I know it'll probably happen to me, and so I don't want to come off as like the super moralistic, judgmental individual, so that I don't end up like what was it? Some senator who was got caught in a bathroom. Who was this? Do you remember this? You were the
God.
Again, whenever I look for salacious articles like this, I just start with you guys first.
We went too hard for me to remember.
Okay.
Last night was too intense for me to be able to recall those details.
You were doing
George. It's a senator. He's I think he might have been from like Idaho. It was one of those kinds of states.
You were doing intense study for this podcast at the Rhino. Is that at the Rhino? Yeah. Okay. That's where it happens.
But yeah, just there's like a well-known, I guess, in that community or whatever, there's a thing that they would do of like, that you kind of indicate to your stallmate that you're down for gay sex by like
this is a politically conservative senator who is asking another man to have sex with him in a bathroom
at a time where like marriage bans were all on the books, and he's speaking in favor of them and that sort of thing, and telling people that he's a married heterosexual male, and solicits a what turns out to be an undercover officer for sex.
Right.
But the solicitation process involved like, it was some kind of like reaching under the bathroom stall sort of thing, and he's like, no, I didn't do that. I just have a very wide stance. Like he's breaking down the mechanics of how he shits.
Yeah.
So he explains that like, no, this is just a big mix up. I was not trying to hire gay sex. I just shit weird.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What a country.
There's the TikTok clip right there.
That's just a huge element of our podcast and my life view. It's just, you look at this stuff, there's so much absurdity, and you have these people going around in their business suits, like you're talking about finance, like that this is a strictly ordered world, and you're whistling in the dark because you're trying to show that you're not scared, but the fact you're whistling makes it clear that you are scared, or else you wouldn't feel the need to whistle. Like, you're trying to pretend, like the fact that you are trying to communicate to me so like fervently that there is order in this world is proof that you're worried that there's not, and you should listen to that worry because there isn't.
Right.
It should be pretty obvious by now.
Yeah.
You got fucking the leaders of the country talking about the way that they shit to explain that they didn't hire a fucking male prostitute in clear contravention of their fucking stated political beliefs, And there's just this shit constant. Like I just see it everywhere of like, you guys are telling me that this is all like, that we live in this evil, civil society, and like, I don't know. It seems weirder than that, and I don't think that's bad. I think that's fun, and I think that real enjoyment in life comes through releasing this feeling of control, and embracing the fact that we're fucking, highly evolved bacteria flying on a fucking rock through space, that kind of shit.
Yeah. Yeah, very nice. Let's talk about one of the crown jewels of IJB, Mr. John McAfee.
Yeah, absolutely. I told him, you go to the Rhino, and the first question's always, so what do you do? And I'm like, podcasting, and I just whatever, like I don't want to engage in a long conversation about my job, so it's always just, even in any kind of social situation, it's like, all this stuff is kind of like complex that I don't know that I can explain it to a cab driver, and I definitely know that I don't want to, right?
Yeah.
And so you just kind of give, vague answers, and she's continuing to be interested or whatever. And so I'm like, so she's like, who you ever talk to any big people? I'm like,
this is a dancer at the Rhino asking you if you've ever interviewed big people. Got it.
Yeah. And I'm like, John McAfee. Yeah. this is last night. And she, so I'm finding myself in this surreal situation where I'm explaining to this beautiful lady that there was a guy who shit into a hammock and paid women to stand under the hole.
No. The women shit on him.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. Okay. So let's reset for everyone. John McAfee. Yes, that is the McAfee antivirus that you used to have back on your, your Microsoft machine, your Dell machine, computer back in the day.
I think McAfee antivirus is still
do you see it?
I
don't, because I have an Apple. I don't see it.
Yeah.
So he goes off the deep end, and he doesn't want to pay federal income taxes, and then moves to Central America, and then apparently
the level of control of the community he had, I don't think is available in the States.
In the States. So I believe he's in Belize.
Yeah.
And then you can
paying the whole town.
Yeah. Is it a Netflix documentary about him? About
it's called Gringo.
Gringo. Okay. He apparently, from all indications, has an individual murdered while he's there, and then flees the country. And then what happens from that point on? Somehow you get an interview with him, which is just like, trust me, I've been friends with Bilzerian, and that was an awesome interview for him. But what you got with John McAfee before he died is incredible to me. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. He had these murder charges, and he initially fled them by returning to America to run as the Libertarian candidate for president.
Yes.
But eventually, the IRS started getting considerably more concerned about some of the decisions that he had made. And so he fled to avoid paying for the, whatever tax stuff, and was hiding. He wasn't saying where he was.
Yeah.
He, in the interview, he documents some of the stuff he's doing to try and...
An interview with you, he's using a VPN. You have no idea where he is.
100%. Yeah. And I don't know what Faraday cage means, but he's explaining to us that he's in a Faraday cage.
A guy named Michael Faraday. He's
I've seen Lost.
Scientist from a long time ago. Basically, the idea is if you guys ever go into an elevator and all of a sudden you can't get cell signal, it's because it has to do with the fact that the frequency that you're transmitting on, the mesh is smaller than that frequency. So an example would be that how you stand in front of your microwave and look at your food cooking, but it doesn't fry your face. It's because that mesh is actually smaller than a microwave. The wavelength of a microwave. Faraday cage is basically, you can either put an electrical charge through a metal box, or you can just have something with a mesh to where when I put my phone in a Faraday box, I get no signal at all, even though outside the box I do get a signal. Does that make sense? Just a hardened box.
Yeah. I don't really understand, like, it seemed like he was saying that the area he lived in was just like his apartment was a Faraday cage, which seems extreme. And then if that is the case, like, I guess you're just achieving what you would achieve by not having a cell phone. Like how
That's exactly
is it,
right. Yes.
Yeah, but then why doesn't he just not have a cell phone?
He probably believes, that John McAfee did not have the greatest grasp on things, right?
He seemed to have a lot more confidence than knowledge.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So for him, he probably believes that like a tooth filling he got when he was 18, they can track him with it, or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
What I'm saying is like it's like paranoia. Generally, people who are paranoid about one thing are paranoid about a lot of things. So from his standpoint, if anyone has ever had a cell phone in his building or whatever, they can, or people are tracking him for some kind of way. But if you had a Faraday cage, if you were living in a apartment was a Faraday cage, in the U.S. military we call it a skiff. We actually had these skiffs where it was you couldn't transmit in or out. If you put a bug in the Faraday cage, you would not be able to transmit the information out of it. That's the point.
Okay.
That's the point of it. So
that's more
if he's being bugged or people are trying to track his
Got it.
GPS location or whatever, that's the reason why he would do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Was he actually in a Faraday cage? I don't know. I think he's just saying a cool word.
Yeah. Again, I think that the confidence far exceeds the reality.
Yeah.
But so I was, have you heard about the new Star Wars area of Disney World?
Yes. I've seen pictures of it.
Well, I was on a vacation. Not more like a long on one than like it's not like I like Star Wars. I wouldn't like just go to the opening,
right?
But like I was on a vacation, standing in line for the new Millennium Falcon ride, which here to tell you, pretty dope.
Yeah.
And it's hour and a half long line, so I'm reading Twitter in the line.
Yeah.
And I see that someone who listens to the podcast sent me a tweet from McAfee saying that he's just looking to go on casts.
There we go. So that's how you got him.
Yeah. And so he says, like, email my wife, Janice, if you're interested. And so I just standing in line, type out an email on my phone to Janice, move another half hour up in the Millennium Falcon line.
Yeah.
Janice gets back to me. I'm like, they're interested. Let's find some dates. Yeah. So we're just going back and forth. Like, does this work for you? Does this work for you? And eventually we find something that's good. Put it on the calendar with they sent like a Zoom link, and then me and Jake talked to John McAfee for 45 minutes.
That was incredible. Were you nervous?
Incredibly, yeah.
Dude, when I got Dr. Buss on, and it was way easier than I thought to get Dr. David Buss. Obviously, of all the interviews I've done, I'm the biggest fan of his. Of anyone else.
He's one of your guys.
I was nervous. I was incredibly nervous.
Sure.
And I think he was taken aback by the fact I'd read every single one of his books and I was quoting it. And a lot of times what will happen is people will like do some research on me and they'll see the pictures of me hosting bikini competitions. And then we're having a discussion about quantum mechanics and then like evolutionary psychology.
You're a true Renaissance man.
And they're like, what the fuck is happening right now? I did not expect, right? So yeah, that's how I felt, booking him. I was super nervous. I mean, if you go listen to the intro for the David Buss interview, I'm stumbling through it. Like same thing with Tom Sosnoff, by the way. I'm a huge fan of his as well. So you're nervous and you get to interview the legend who actually had prostitutes shit into his mouth while he was in a so the women are in the hammock.
Yeah, that's in the documentary.
And he pays them to shit on him. By the way, yeah, it's in the documentary. Yeah. And they all, he goes, he wanted me to poop.
When you watch the documentary about this murder, the only thing that you can walk away thinking about is the women describing
them pooping on John McAfee.
Yeah, like that he was just had all the semi-attractive to attractive ladies in the village, had them on payroll, like paying them big, like putting them up in houses and stuff, and just like so they're like setting up all the things he's doing, to like support these women's lifestyles, and then they're like, so why was he doing this? What did he want you to do? And they all, to a T, say he never asked for sex of any kind. The only thing he wanted was just us to lie in this hammock and shit into the hammock so that he could put his mouth under the hole.
Yes.
Insane.
Shout out to John McAfee. Rest in peace. So I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's all I could remember. I remember posting a clip of that on my story because you told me about it and I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was whenever I was, whenever we were hanging out the most. That was whenever I watched the documentary.
Okay, so now you have asked. I've told you before. I intend on having O.J. Simpson on this podcast.
Can't wait.
Putting it out there in the world.
Yeah.
And you have given me a list of questions you want me to ask O.J. Now, the obvious question you would ask John McAfee was about that. Did you guys ask him? I do not recall. Did you ask him about a hammock or girls?
That was, definitely by far the most nervous. But yeah, 100%. I mean,
what did he say?
That's why we got the interview, right? He said, like, it seemed to me based on the answer that it was an obvious yes, despite the things that he was saying were like supposed to be no. Like it was one of those things where like hard to say, like it's always hard to read what people really mean and everything. Communication is incredibly complex and difficult.
Yeah.
But my rule is if I ask someone a direct question and they say anything other than no, then the answer is yes.
Right, exactly.
And so whenever I ask him, we saw this allegation, I'm interested, talking directly to the source. And this was definitely when we're stumbling over our words the most.
Yeah.
And, heart's fucking beating because you're asking a guy
John
if he fucking has women shit into his mouth. And he's like, basically like, does that sound like the sort of thing I would do? And the only thing I'm hearing is he didn't say no anywhere in that sentence.
Yeah.
He's like, these documentary makers, the kind of stuff that they say. Yeah, well, the kind of stuff they say, is it true, John? Like, I know it's wild they said it, but like, it feels like we have not addressed whatsoever the idea of whether or not whether these things happen.
Yeah.
The fact he's ducking it to me indicates that he would prefer not to interface directly with whether or not it happened because it did.
Yeah.
Why would that? Like, that'd be an insane thing to fabricate in a documentary.
Yeah. Or have multiple women say that unprompted say that.
This is like lady after lady being like, I know about I did the hammock stuff.
Yeah. That's so wonderful. But the part where like, he didn't ask for sex. That's the other part that is just like mind blowing.
I think that's kind of what I was focused on too. I'm like, John, I've had sex before. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
You should try it.
Yeah, having someone poop on you, I don't know if that's good. I don't know. I can't say one way or the other, but I do know the sex part.
But if I wanted, based on what I know, if I wanted to guess, I know which one I would rather do.
I got to weigh these two things: getting poop in my mouth or having sex.
I want to help you, my man.
Yeah, for sure. He probably would have been like, "Wow, is sex really good? I didn't know." All right, another. Yeah, did you ever try to get? You guys were under the Epstein thing before a lot of people. I had. I learned a lot about the Jeffery Epstein deal before the arrest from listening to you guys.
Jake's wife had alerted him to the Miami Herald, like the Julie Brown articles. Like whenever Epstein in 2006 had the prosecution start against him of, just the Palm Beach Police Department had put together dozens of women directly saying, like, this guy paid me as a 16-year-old to come to his house and jerk him off.
Right.
And, that all happened. The prosecution occurred. And then it was, and I think even then it was like mostly like a Palm Beach story, like people in Palm Beach heard about it, but the world's not paying attention. And the thing goes through the entire court process, the now infamous Alex Acosta non-prosecution, or it's not non-prosecution, the plea deal.
So Alex Acosta, the district attorney, he decides.
He's the federal prosecutor.
The federal prosecutor at the time. He says what exactly when trying. They have Epstein pretty much dead to rights at this point, and they do not further the prosecution because of why. I think he ends up with one charge or something like that.
Yeah, he did like a work release thing for a couple months.
Yeah, for having sex with a minor, he ended up doing a work release deal. And what was it?
He pled to solicitation of prostitution.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it might have even been underage, but I'm surprised that it's an option in the legal system that soliciting an underage prostitute has like the choice, like the judge can assign. I mean, it's just going to be
otherwise what we wouldn't see
work release.
We wouldn't see Lawrence Taylor at all these parties if that was the case.
I guess so. But yeah, so then Julie Brown, a Miami Herald reporter, wrote a series of articles just exposing this, just saying like, it certainly seems like this is not how justice is normally carried out. Like this guy got the sort of leniency that should cause some eyebrows to be raised. And, just then from there, you start asking questions.
Yeah.
And as far as I think that what I think you were getting at was the Alex Acosta. I think the most direct, I think at the time he told the media, there was some quote about, this is a complicated case. It's an intelligence case.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was definitely an article with a quoted source saying that because Alex Acosta went on to be the Secretary of Labor under Donald Trump, and the transition team interviewed Acosta, the way that they do to vet him as a possible cabinet member, and asked him about that. And his response to them was, I was told to back off because he belongs to intelligence.
Right. And Alex Acosta...
Epstein belongs to intelligence.
Yes, Alex Acosta later has to step down because of later findings with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, which it's good, but I was always blown away that... just in the Trump era, the kind of stuff that some people would get away with.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, Alex Acosta seems like a bad guy. He is the proximate decision maker on the record in that case. But does anyone think that in something like that he has independence to make this decision?
Right.
The cigarette smoking man was behind him telling him what he could do. And the fact that he listened to him, of course he did, Yeah. So I think that people like him shouldn't be in government, going back to what I was saying earlier. But the kinds of people who were enthusiastic about having him in government before, that they then were like, well, now it's not okay.
Yeah.
What happened? What changed?
Yeah.
But God bless him.
I mean, so again, it was a 4-part documentary on Netflix. That was the first time that I had seen this whole thing.
Filthy Rich.
Filthy Rich. That's the one. And so the problem is when we later find out that Jeffrey Epstein has done several things with minors, what happened the first time when we had a chance to catch him? We didn't do anything about it. And now those people were then held accountable, which seems a little bit ridiculous going back. And then you guys asked me, because that was the first time I did IJB, I was in an interview, you guys asked me if he killed himself. And I don't know if he killed himself, but I do use it as a punchline for every single event.
Yeah.
So I was hosting Swimsuit USA's World Championship right after our interview, and I was on stage, and I was like, hey, congratulations to Laura Zafiri. She's our Swimsuit USA World Champion. You will find her and all the other contestants at the Copacabana right behind you, and you will also find that Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself. Good night. And then I dropped the microphone, and I walk off.
Great bit.
And my co-host, Sierra Nowak, shout out to Sierra. She was the 2018 World Champion, and she's like, good night. She was so sad. And I get off stage and all the judges are giving me high fives because they had dared me to say that the whole week. It was so great. It was I don't know if he killed himself, but it is definitely a tagline I use at the end of my events.
I within the last couple months tried to dive in and see what's the evidence on either side. And there's just a lot to recommend both positions, I think.
I mean, we can't disprove with negative. We don't know he does not have video of.
It's super weird that we don't have video.
Yes.
I think that should give everyone pause.
There were too many people doing too many illegal things in his presence on his properties where we know he had cameras to not believe that we don't have a video of Prince Albert with so-and-so or Bill Clinton with so-and-so.
Prince Andrew, yeah.
Prince
Albert's
yeah.
Penis piercing.
Yeah. There we go. The next TikTok clip. Yes, Prince Andrew. I'm sorry. Correct. Yeah. Did you ever watch The Crown? It's really funny how they portray Prince Andrew in The Crown.
No, I have a tough time with the British.
Yeah, it's Crown. I highly recommend it. Fantastic. Olivia Colman's fantastic. All right. So what was your conclusion from your research?
Well, I remain in the middle. Like I said, I think that the fact that he was supposed to be checked on, I think every half hour, and I think it'd been 6 hours since they had actually followed up on that. There's just a lot of inconsistencies about like the people on staff, like just whatever you're trying to construct your conspiracy narrative. You can just imagine someone like getting the phone call, like shadowy voice, like you're sick tomorrow, don't ask questions.
Yeah.
And then the special guy goes in, the prison guard / CIA agent goes in. And the fact that the video disappeared from it, like they had video of the cell, you know, like they're supposed to know what's going on in federal prisons constantly. Yeah. And everyone's just like, listen, there was a mistake. We wiped it. We didn't mean to.
We didn't mean to wipe it. Yeah.
As far as where is it, the answer is nowhere. There was a guy hired by Epstein's brother that did his own coroner's examination or whatever. And, obviously he's more or less being paid to come back and say that it's not a suicide. So the fact that he did say that then isn't surprising. Yeah. But you got to kind of listen to the things he's saying and find out whether or not they're persuasive to you. And there's a series of bones in your neck. I know the one that he was most focused on is the hyoid bone.
Hyoid bone is the only bone in your body that does not connect to another bone. And it is in the, it's a free-floating bone.
Do you know all the bones?
I do not know all 216 bones. I do not.
But you do know the number of how many bones are. That's impressive.
I could be wrong about 216. It's 200 something. But it's the only one that does not have a direct joint cartilage connection to another bone. It's a free-floating bone.
Yeah, so just the angle at which he's hanging himself, that just basically the things going on in your neck, it's different if you're hanging yourself versus you're being strangled, which makes sense, because you think about hanging, like you're kind of down, and whereas, if they're trying to choke you, then they're probably like lifting you up some or like applying pressure. It's just going to look different. And, he had some kind of statistic of like, you look at the number of times that a hyoid bone got broken in a time where everyone knows for certain that the cause of death was self-inflicted hanging. It's a pretty rare occurrence. So, that's the kind of stuff, just you got all these improprieties around it. And just as far as the question of like who would want him dead, it's got a lot of answers.
A lot of people, yeah.
And see, you look at all that stuff, but they did have him, he was on suicide watch because he had tried before. Okay. And he had I'm pretty sure there was camera of that one. I don't know that they ever released it. I'm not sure. But whatever you try to figure out if someone committed suicide, if they already tried to commit suicide, most of the time, I think you kind of stop asking questions at that point. Like whenever people have a pattern of trying to do things, they probably kept on that pattern.
We also do know a motivation for why he would commit suicide.
If I thought I was gonna have to face the shit that he did, I'd fucking be out.
So here's a theory, and this is not a completely testable theory. So the belief is obviously that Adolf Hitler was a narcissist and therefore a sociopath. So therefore, being all sociopaths are narcissists, he could not have committed suicide because narcissists do not believe in the destruction of themselves. They are the most important thing in the world. And so there's still a lot of people who believe he didn't shoot Eva Braun, or he shot Eva Braun, but he didn't kill himself. So that's why a lot of people believing that Jeffrey Epstein, who clearly shows Machiavellian, narcissistic, and sociopathic tendencies, also would not have committed to it. It's very difficult. A narcissist or someone with borderline personality disorder will frequently attempt suicide. I know this one girl, she was dating a guy, and she's like, my boyfriend needs so much help. He went out into the desert, and he had a gun, and he took a bunch of pills, and he had a knife, and he slit it. So wait, hold on, tell me. He slit his wrist, and he took pills to kill himself, and he had a gun, and he didn't die. The only thing he needs help with is aim. Are you kidding me? This dude doesn't want to die. Yeah. If you're a man and you're doing all that, he's trying to get your attention. He's trying to get you back.
All the people that really want to die, they're dead.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good. Yeah, gravity tends to work pretty well. I found that. There's several other ways to do it, but I just think it's interesting. And again, I'm not saying this is pro or con. I'm just saying there is a theory that narcissists are nearly or mostly incapable of suicide because of their own aggrandizement of their own, how much they believe in themselves. Does that make sense? So that could be a reason why some people.
Yeah, but I just, I want anyone listening to this, I just want to say that you can achieve your dreams. Don't let limiting beliefs stand in the way of you. There's nothing.
The fun thing about Jeffrey Epstein is like no one's coming to his defense. If I say he killed himself, no one's like, Michael, you need to be a little bit more sensitive. It's too soon. Like no one. No,
See, you're wrong about that though. You reach enough people, someone does have the opinion that this is a good guy that's being maligned. You shouldn't say those sorts of things about him.
There is a movement on certain platforms to have the attraction to underage people be claimed as a sexual orientation. I forgot what it's called, but I was reading somewhere about it. They were trying to turn it into a sexual orientation to make it
minor attracted persons. I think.
There was.
Yeah.
MAP maps. Okay, that's the video I saw. I was actually going to have somebody on who was an expert in this whole idea, but
yeah, it's you get into some of these corners of the internet, the extent to which pedophiles have attempted to like explain the underpinnings of their pedophilia in a way that is palatable to the rest of society. It's sick stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like I think that everyone should have some amount of, but for the grace of God, there go I sort of thing. Like I don't know what I've done to make it so that I should feel like I'm just so much better than these people. It just seems like they probably, who knows, like if you had this sort of things happen or if you had their genetic makeup, like just what degree of control do any of us have? Anything?
The other problem is not even 1,500 years ago, marrying and having children with 13 and 14-year-olds was not unrare. It was commonplace.
I mean, in the fucking 1970s, it appears that every single rock star.
Oh yeah, So that's another thing we should talk about. Like in the 60s and 70s, go listen to
my parents' lifetime.
Go listen to the lyrics of these songs about having sex with the 16-year-olds. Like,
and then read the fucking biographies where they're explaining that in fact they were doing the things in those songs.
Crazy. Yeah, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's disturbing stuff.
Let's talk about Andrew Tate. I didn't even, you knew who he was. His people reach out to me. He's going to come do the podcast. I'm excited. I've listened to a bunch of his podcasts. I obviously don't agree with everything. Like I would never call myself a pimp. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that he does, but there's certain things that he believes fundamentally. I do agree with, as far as like a level of self-reliance and yeah, I don't know what to think all about it. You were impressed because he had a tweet about Star Wars. Can you remind me about all this?
Well, it's the pinned tweet on his account.
Yeah.
Of Wudon is his Twitter handle.
Yeah.
And it's I wish I had it memorized, but one day I will. Whenever I have the back tattoo. It's just people ask me if I'm seeing Star Wars. Keep your movie. I'm a billionaire. Like, it's basically
I made $1 million. I've never seen your movie.
Yeah,
I don't care about your movie.
Like appearing to say that like if you have the self-discipline not to watch Star Wars, then like $1 billion will show up.
Yeah.
But if you break and see it, fucking minimum wage for you the rest of the time on out. I'm pretty sure George Lucas has seen it. I think he has somewhere. So it doesn't totally hold up.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, one of my favorite podcasts is the Brunigs.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Brunig writes for The Atlantic now.
Yeah.
And her husband, Matt, runs a think tank. And, I as far as like where I'm taking my political signals, I think they get a lot of stuff right. Matt's, I would love it if I should send you the link to the social wealth fund paper. That's, in my opinion, if you ask me like what's like if I could do one thing in the American political system, I would get his social wealth fund implemented.
Interesting. Okay.
Just because I think it's stuff that would appeal to you because it's market socialism.
Right.
Like it's not like whatever your previous ideas of like it's the furthest thing from like, what Joseph Stalin was attempting to do or something like that. Like I don't look at, I hate totalitarian governments.
Yes.
Like I value my individual freedom. And I think that a lot of people think that, certainly like the image that's attempting to be cast by the right is that, like whatever. Socialism is like acknowledging that you do have some collective responsibilities that should check your behavior, or like, like that you do owe something to the people around you, but like whatever, we're in a society, we do, but anyways, market socialism is, the social wealth fund thing would just put, just raise money by various sources and then use that money to invest in stocks, and then we would all have a share.
Right.
Like just as an American, you'd have a share, and so your wealth would go up with this share. You would get dividends at certain points for certain things, but
sure.
then as it increases, we all would collectively own, some of these important entities. So whenever Amazon is creating conditions where their drivers are regularly, shitting in bottles or whatever to hit their marks. Right now Amazon does have to answer to a board about that. And, whenever that board meets, that if the seats are held by the shareholders, and if the American people are the shareholders, I think that it would cause, whatever. There's a lot of things the American people have approved of that fucking suck. You know, like the Iraq War occurred, as you're aware.
I am vaguely aware of the Iraq War, yes. So
it's not perfect, but like it's better than if the only people weighing in on this are the fucking, hyper-capitalist, exploit everyone to get everything, like me, whatever. I don't think that's close to an answer to your question about Andrew Tate, so I'll get back to it.
Yeah.
The Brunigs, just Matt Brunig, one of his like side fascinations was just this subculture of these people online. I think that one of the hallmarks was a real enthusiasm around drop shipping.
Yeah, so what's happened now, it's not just that, it's Amazon storefronts also. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people that are selling these Amazon storefronts and drop shipping because of the 4-Hour Workweek, the book by Tim Ferriss. Mm-hmm. And so now what's happened is a lot of people who had 9-to-5 jobs, that all of a sudden they think that they can work from home, and then they can do this sort of like job from their laptop at home. And while it was a good idea when that book came out, that's how supply and demand works. It's almost like, I don't know if you've seen every stripper and bartender becoming a real estate agent in the last 2 years, but that tells you we're at a bubble, right? When strippers and bartenders are all becoming real estate agents. No, shout out, by the way, there's several very successful strippers that I know that became very successful real estate agents, but not all of them. That just tells you that this area is being flooded. So the Amazon storefront, great idea. Before that, there was a Facebook marketing thing, was very similar. Mm-hmm. Before that was like people selling Forex products. These are the kind of things that work until the area is flooded, and then they don't work anymore.
Yeah, all of it's like the details are kind of unimportant, right?
Yeah.
Because the general thing is like, listen to me and you'll get rich.
Yes.
And whenever someone tells you that you might get rich, they're definitely going to get rich. And that's the thing you always need to keep your eye on. And just whenever people are perpetuating things like that, they'll do stuff like they're trying to kind of create an alternate reality, right? Like that's sort of the goal, like an alternate reality where to the people that they're speaking to, where it makes sense for you to send them lots of money. Tate does all these like war room dinners and stuff. And so he's just trying to create an alternate reality in which it's definitely a really good idea for you to spend several $1,000s to eat dinner with this guy, and like you got to pay for your dinner. So it's fun for me to be someone who is existing outside of this reality and watch the other person try to make it, because it's like the Wohl thing of like where you can see these seams, and it's hilarious. The absurdity is overwhelming.
Andrew wrote me a couple days ago. He had to postpone our episode because he has to pick up a Bugatti.
He's always talking about the Bugatti he's about to pick up
in Dubai, and he has to ship it. That's what he told me. And then he's going to come in March or April, and we're going to do an interview then.
Maybe he'll bring the Bugatti.
Man, I wouldn't mind. I'd love to. We'll go to Chick-fil-A and the Bugatti. That's what
me and his fellow Twitter followers get regular updates on how things are going at the factory in France.
Okay. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I find him to be very compelling, but you're right. I don't agree with everything he says, but
he's fascinating. I mean, all this stuff, like, him, Alex Jones, any of them, like they're outliers on kind of like the normal psychological spectrum. And like they're just taking various aspects of the human psyche to the extreme. And I think that's where you learn about things, right? Like whenever it's like in starker contrast, starker relief, like that's like, if someone's like 5% Alex Jones, it's hard to detect. If they're 100% Alex Jones, then you can really start to like see, and then it just kind of helps you understand everything a little better, I think.
When we had Flat Earth Dave on, he's such a zealot about the Earth being flat.
And I think he's on one of those extremes. Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, what an unbelievable defense attorney this guy would be.
Sure.
Like, I think I feel the same way about Alex Jones. Like, I don't agree with what he's saying, but man, what an incredible orator he could have been in some other field had he, laid off the Adderall a little bit in the whiskey, but still like had something else to talk about. He could have done that instead. I'm obviously politically a little bit to the right of you and to the left of Cobra Tate, but at the same time, it's just like I listen to these people and I'm like, wow, man, they're so, like what you said before, they're so fascinating. You are looking for I'm always looking for the chaos. I'm always looking, like, it's just interesting to me to watch this thing work. And here's an interesting, I'm reading The Expanse, book 7 of The Expanse. I highly recommend The Expanse. It's probably the best fiction I've read next to A Song of Ice and Fire, maybe in my life. And one of the things they talk about is throughout human history, one of the things that made human history work is that we fight and argue and muddle. In our American Constitution, which, by the way, we have the longest standing form of government in the entire world, 241 years, right? So it's 242 years. How many years have we been around?
Too much Rhino for math.
I know. Sorry, I was up too late. 200 and something years, 40 something years. And so what's happened is, I know it's really hard to go 76 to 2022, right? Isn't it? It's funny. The thing is, the reason why it works is because we debate. So a lot of people think debating is the problem. A lot of people think that you and me disagreeing and then talking about it is so divisive, and that's the problem. That is how the forefathers created this form of government, so that the president doesn't have all the power. He can have a legislature that doesn't agree with him, or one body of government doesn't agree with the other, or the legislative branch doesn't agree. And when we do that, it keeps us from, regardless of whether you agree or not, it makes it like you love it when you're an Obama supporter or you're a Trump supporter and your guy's in office, you're like, fuck yeah, do everything he says, right? But when the other guy's in office and you're not an Obama supporter or a Trump supporter, and then you see that the legislative and judicial branch can slow this guy down you don't like, then you're like, fuck yeah, slow him down. That's the way we were supposed to debate. We're supposed to slug it out. We're supposed to slug it out.
Yeah, I think like there's been, I've read I think it was in the New Yorker article about, it was basically like summarizing a study. So, if I was really smart, I just would have read the study.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm at, dude. And it was just saying that there's a lot of evidence that, I think one of the goals should be to create an equal society. Like inequality is bad. I think that, I just don't believe that any of us are like made to be better than the others. We're all just God's children, right? And that governments with more veto points create inequality. Like, it's just stops between the will of the people. So what you're saying is like I know what you're saying, like of like, the will of the people was that, to some extent, whatever, that Donald Trump be in power and get to make all the decisions that he wanted to make. And surely if like all of those had gone through, then I would have been unhappy with, the results. But I think that on net, it seems that it is better. And just like, it seems fairer, right? Like if part of what's going on bad in our government is that you have the Electoral College, so that Trump was able to get power without like a bare majority of votes. But let's just say that he had a majority of votes. Like it's not that hard to imagine that world, right?
Yeah.
Like he was pretty fucking close to winning the popular vote.
Yeah.
So let's just say that he had. If that is the case, like I don't like the decisions, and I am worried about like the fates of the people, like the fucking families, coming to the border and having their children separated from, and I'm sure that some of them still don't fucking know where those kids are. Like that story's dropped off the media attention, but I would be shocked if 100% of the families were reunited. That. I don't want that to happen, but like in a certain like fairness sense, like if that is what most of the people in the country want to see occur, like, you should allow that to, like, you're going to create more problems. You're going to create revolutions, if like people feel like they can't get the things that they want done through the normal means. And if you have enough people agreeing that this is what we ought to do, then like you sort of need to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, having something like the Senate is just, it's a not a representative body. It's more skewed than the Electoral College is, I think.
Yeah.
And it gets to veto anything that occurs. Like it's a bad setup. It makes us, like what you're saying of like, the power is switching. And so, sometimes I get what I want. Sometimes you get what you want or whatever.
Or at least we slow it down.
Yeah, but I mean, the slowing it down is just, it's essentially, it's denying the will of the people.
Right. Okay.
And like the more people that are getting denied, the more agitated they are. It's like, I don't know. I don't think that I don't think we're anywhere near like violence in the streets, like in a massive scale, like civil war. I don't think that's, I think that people are really alarmist about that. It's not helping the probabilities, right?
Yeah.
Like you are edging towards that direction whenever you do things like this, and it's not hard to see why. Like if you feel like you don't have a route to live in the sort of society you want to live in, even if your neighbors agree with you about what we should do, just because there's like, some fucking freaks up at the top that like feel otherwise, that they get to call the shots, like, you can see a lot of times throughout history that leads to the breakdown of, the country.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming out here, TC. You're one of the first people I wanted whenever I came up with the idea for this.
Thank you, man.
Podcast. It's really honor to have you on. If you guys, where can they find your podcast? Where can they find that?
Search It's Just Banter on iTunes. I think we're on Spotify somewhere. But
you are.
Mainly an iTunes kind of deal.
You can listen to them at double speed on iTunes or triple speed on Spotify. I have checked out both. I'm waiting for you guys to get on YouTube. Listen, I listen to you guys because you challenge some of my beliefs, right? I did grow up pretty politically conservative. I am somewhat just a little bit to the right of the center, being a Texas kid who grew up Protestant and played outside linebacker and joined the military. There's still a little bit of that in me. And so I do listen to you guys to just try to understand from an empathetic standpoint, and just saying, instead of saying those people over there who don't believe what I believe, I try to listen to every point of view that I can. Like I said, Margaret Atwood and Ayn Rand, read both of them. So I just want to say, hey guys, thank you for joining us. I know this was very different. We had, two adult actresses on last week, and we're going to change it up this week with something different. Thank you guys for all the support that I've been getting. I just want to let you know, for those of you, let your friends know about this podcast, because so many people literally think that all I do is TikTok and Reels. They don't realize that there's actually a podcast on YouTube, because the TikTok is blown up. Thank you guys for all the comments that I've been getting. And I really do appreciate the reviews you guys are writing me on iTunes and the comments that you're sending. And once again, over 20,000 subscribers. Shout out to all the flat earthers for helping me get to 20,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome for leaving all those comments about, talking shit about me. I appreciate that. We will have you guys, TC, hopefully we'll have you on sometime. I want to have you as a co-host when I have another guest on that you've always wanted.
Yeah, sure.
That would be awesome. I would love to have a debate or something like that. Guys, thank you all for joining us. We will see you all next week.